Hi everyone, welcome back to the Kind of Funny Guest Bedroom. We are back for another week after a little bit of a hiatus, but happy to be back. I'm Simba Jones, and I'm once again joined by Brian Saber. Welcome back, Brian.
Hey, thank you for having me back. It's another week of a lot of gaming news as well as just, stuff that's been happening in the, kind of funny realm. Uh, there's a I think this episode's going to be a very big mood shift, like back and forth between what we're talking about. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's definitely a lot to talk about. But yeah, let's just start it off light, I guess. Maybe talk about what we've been watching and playing. I've honestly not been doing a ton of gaming the last couple of weeks. I've just kind of, I don't know, been in a little bit of a funk. I attribute it to just to the uh, winter and it being so cold here in
Mhm.
Colorado, and also just kind of like more general, like kind of almost like New Year's resolution kind of stuff. I'm not usually the type of person that sets like a hard resolution, but I do have at least kind of like vague goals of like, oh, I want to start doing this more. So I've kind of just been, you know, trying to get my life into a bit more of a routine, getting out and like walking more. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been getting out and walking. And then it had a whole week of like it being basically 0 degrees, and that was a tough one to to want to go outside and
It's kind
walk
yeah, it's kind of hard when everything's frozen over.
for sure.
Kind of ruins the mood of being outdoors.
Um, but this last week's been a little warmer, and yeah, the one thing I like, and it'll be interesting to see how this shifts, because yeah, I do DoorDash for my main job, and so I get a lot of time in my car, a lot of time to listen to podcasts, and so just through that, um, I can usually listen to almost every podcast that Kind of Funny puts out, um, and
Nice.
uh, it's just like easy when I'm listening in my car, and so like I do tend to like at least want to keep up with at least like the main podcast that they're doing. I haven't I feel like been following along in like the last year or so, but I've been following along with In Review this year pretty steadily, and so that's
Oh yeah.
got to watch the first two Predator movies this last couple of weeks for my first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
so far that's been the case for all of them. I had never watched Alien, I never watched Predator. Fans will be like, "What are you doing?" But I actually have seen some of the earlier, like what are like widely regarded as some of the worst Alien movies. They're like the only ones I've
Oh.
seen. Like I think the first one I saw was Prometheus. Um, uh,
Oh, I've never even seen Prometheus.
I
I've
don't.
I've heard about it though.
It's a weird one. I don't remember much about it, but it was just like my parents were watching it. I had no idea what it even was, and then I'm like, oh, this is like an alien movie, isn't it? I
It's like,
like,
oh,
cause
hold
like,
on.
um, but yeah, like Predator,
Oh,
Predator movies were pretty interesting.
so tell me about it. This being your f first experience with the Predator movies, like going into it, did you have any like frame of reference of like what to expect, or were you like completely blind on the whole experience?
I was more or less completely blind. Like I,
Oh.
I, I kind of just vaguely knew that in both series, the like earlier films were like highly or like more well regarded, but I didn't even know. Like I didn't know. Like I kind of knew that like Alien and Aliens were like really solid. And I knew at least the original Predator was well regarded. I didn't even know what the vibe was or what the like opinions were on Predator 2. I didn't know if that was like, oh, this is gonna be another one of the good ones, or if this is gonna be like what did we're even getting into. And then beyond that, all I knew was that like Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the first one, and then I think my only real thing that I knew from that movie was get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper,
um,
you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I didn't. I obviously I've seen that like uh, that GIF before, but I didn't know it was from Predator or that it was Carl Weathers and Arnold. So that was pretty fun. Yeah, I thought that that one was a uh, great movie. It was yeah, it was interesting just like to see the first kind of take on the Predator because I've familiar with like his design. I did I did play Predator Hunting Grounds back in the day.
Okay.
Not
Hmm.
like extensively, but I did hop in there for like when it was like first launched. And like I don't even know, I don't even think I actually like properly played the game. I just they had like one or two like beta weekends that I
Yeah.
played quite extensively, and then I kind of was just like, I kind of already
Well,
got my fill.
so at least you got the vibe of what the Predator was
Yeah.
playing that game. Yeah, but like it's a big like shift between Predator 1 and 2 where it's like the first one's like okay, we're in the jungle, you know, the Predator's in his element, so it's just like it's a very like high intense like action movie. And then you like flip over to like Predator in the city. Like you're just like in this big city with the Predator kind of prowling around. It's like a complete like environmental shift
Yeah, and
from
it's
the
like
first movie. It
so many weird choices in that movie. I liked Nick talking about I guess the original concept was to have it in New York. And I think that if that was the only difference and it was they still had the kind of strange all these like different warring gangs and stuff. I don't know. It probably would have been largely the same, but I just environmentally like the really tall buildings would have been cool. And yeah, I guess it would have been like the literal opposite of like the concrete jungle. I know they like that was like the vibe that they went for still in LA, but I think it would have maybe hit a little harder in New York, and you can kind of
mhm.
tell with like they have like a subway sequence in the movie still. I don't know that LA is much known for its subway, even if it has one. Um,
But it's just like the difference between having the first one just be like the main event is Arnold Schwarzenegger versus the Predator, and then you go to Predator 2 and it's the Predator versus Danny Glover. I was like, okay,
yeah,
cool.
and then we also get Bill Paxton again. Like, because he just popped up in
Hmm.
Aliens, and it's like even more over the top in Predator 2. He's like, I don't know what a lot of the direction for different people in that movie was. People were just, I mean, they're it's so heightened. Got Gary Busey coming in. There's like so many.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a different energy. But I think I don't know. There's definitely like the Predator isn't as cool because there's just like the movie itself is just a lot goofier. I think he starts off pretty much a similar vibe of the movie of the first film of him kind of just like you not seeing him much and pulling out all of these
Mhm.
different um weapons and stuff. And it for whatever reason it's easy for me to think about the Predator as just one entity, even though I know this is like a different one from the first movie since that one died. um
Yeah. It's
but
like the idea of like the race of predators like being like this big collection of just like hunter gatherer kind of alien race with like their different tribes and whatnot. Like when you dive deep into like predator lore, it's kind of interesting. I mean, that's easy for me to say because I prefer Predator over Alien,
okay.
to be honest. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's like the same type of like antagonist character, but you know it's a different one because the other one blew itself up. It's like, okay, so it's like you don't have that baggage of like the last movie to carry on forward. Um, but I don't know. If I had to make a suggestion, if because I know they'll get to it at some point in the in review, um, but I'd say for anybody out there that's like looking for like another like good Predator movie, Prey is really good. Prey was the most recent one that came out 2 years ago at this point on
Okay.
Hulu, and it's a whole different like not like a whole different take, but it's like what if a predator came to Earth during the time when like the Americas were just getting colonized, and like so what if like this like Native American tribe got into contact with a predator, and like your main character, she is like trying to figure out like what the fuck's this thing, like what's going on, like you know. So it's like, what if like this highly technological like alien like Apex Predator came into like the world where like technology was just starting to like develop.
Okay,
And it's
yeah,
like
that's
how do you go from like a like bow and arrow with like maybe like a Spaniard that has a gun and like try to figure out how to beat the Predator that way? It's really good.
yeah. I've definitely heard great things about that one. Because I think the whatever the new Predator movie coming out this year is, I believe, the same director as Prey.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like along the same lines as Prey.
Okay, and that'll be yeah, it'll be interesting, especially because like even though in Predator One we kind of we are more modern to have the guns, when it comes right down to it, Arnold Schwarzenegger has to go tribal and get it's all he has is like the forest, the jungle to like build
Put the
bows
mud
and
on
whatnot.
me.
Yep, get the mud going. Yeah, the I don't think it. Again, I don't remember much from it. I don't know how what the critical reception is on it, but I have seen. I believe it was Predators.
Oh, mm.
And that was
Um, Here I just want to look it up real quick so I make sure I'm talking about the right film. Okay, yeah. So Predators. Uh, this was a head scratcher. I'm not gonna say too much because I know the end review is coming, so I don't want to like say too much about it. But I do remember seeing this one in theaters,
oh nice.
and it was a movie.
For sure. I think this was a something like a Blockbuster rental for me, or like I don't even sure Blockbuster. I care my
If
timeline of
Blockbuster
when they
existed.
yeah, it was either like a Redbox or something like that.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah, this is a Redbox movie for sure.
and yeah, again like I guess that is telling that I don't remember much about it, but I don't remember having the worst time. I was just like, yeah, again, yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it.
I
It was
mean,
a movie.
to their credit, they had a star-studded cast because like they had Lawrence Fishburne, Mahershala Ali,
Oh
Topher
wow.
Grace, Danny Trejo, Walton Goggins, uh, Adrian Brody. It's like they had a lot of good actors in this movie, but it was one of those things where it's a good movie if you shut your brain off.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to describe it. Um, yeah, I didn't even know that. Like I think Walton Goggins and Mahershala Ali were like people that I wasn't aware of when I watched that movie back then.
Hmm.
Because I feel like their fame has definitely grown since then.
For sure. Like this was not the movie that made them a household name.
No, yeah, because like yeah, at least like me like recognizing Walton Goggins as like someone on the scene. I think one of my earlier ones I think is probably I think Django Unchained, even though I don't think he's like not in it for very long, but I think he's like at the beginning of it. Um,
Hmm.
and then obviously he's gone on to do like Fallout and Invincible and a lot of I feel like he pops up in smaller roles quite a bit as well. And then I also just finished watching Luke Cage for the first time recently, and Mahershala Ali's in
Oh,
that,
nice.
and
Hmm.
I definitely didn't know around the time Luke Cage was coming out. But yeah, he's both of them have been great and everything I've seen them in. But and then yeah, I'll be interested to see like for better or worse of what people feel about Predators. It seems pretty standard. Everyone thinks that like the Predator is bad. And I just again we don't
Mm.
need to necessarily get into like spoilers, but I thought it was interesting that one of the actors in the original Predator like directed that movie. Was it Shane Black? Can't remember who the what his character's
Mm.
name is in Predator, but that's that'll be interesting for sure.
Let's just say that movie might have done better if it came out a decade prior.
Okay.
But you watch it and it looks of the time that you think the target audience was for that movie, and it was you'll see. Well, when you get to it, you'll see if you dive into it or not.
Well, cool. Yeah, I found like another, maybe like a couple quick things I've been playing. But yeah, you could. I don't know what you've been playing and watching recently.
Um, so I have been diving really hard into the Mecha Break beta
Okay.
that started last week. I played the closed beta that came out last year. I loved it. And when they announced that it was going to come out in open beta, I hopped back in. Um, there's a lot. So comparative to the closed beta to the open beta, the closed beta was literally just hop in, tutorial, and then multiplayer matches. Like that's it.
Okay.
This time around, they have more of a inkling of what the story of the game is going to be. So like you're this pilot, like this mech pilot. The mechs are called strikers, and you are on Earth, and there is this big all-out war that's kind of breaking out between like the people of space and the people that stay on Earth and trying to like gather resources. And there's this crystalline formation that seems to have like a life of its own that's like being encompassing the world. But of course, because it's a new element that has infinite possibilities, everybody wants it. And so like the whole story is, the fight to, stake claim to these resources and try to also, take back Earth and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, cool. Um, the it's kind of funny though because some of the dialogue hasn't been done recorded yet. So you'll have voice actor dialogue, but then it switches to like it's hard to tell if it's like production staff that are doing it or if they're just using AI.
Oh.
But like in parentheses, it says like, this is dialogue that hasn't been recorded yet or like finished yet. So like in the span of like a whole sentence or two, like you'll have voice actor dialogue and it switches and it's like completely different. So I lost track of like who's talking. It's like I don't because it's two different voices. I can't tell who's who. Um,
That's
but
interesting.
that's
Yeah.
just that's
Reminds me of
like go ahead.
Destiny, what people have talked about. Because like I don't know. I'm not actually familiar if the voice actor strike is still ongoing, but I know that was at
It
least
is.
plaguing Destiny. I don't know if that's the same issue here. If this is more of it's just an early
So
game.
not necessarily, because for this one, it's for Mecha Break, it's just that they're still in production of the game, so it's
Yeah.
not 100% yet. Whereas Destiny 2, they got hit with the actor strike. So there's literally moments of the game where there's no voice dialogue. And for anybody that's played Destiny a lot, especially recently, it's a lot of dialogue during action, like you're playing the game and there's voice dialogue happening. But there's an issue when you can't have the voice dialogue. So there's literally just text, like the subtitle text.
Okay.
And so you'll be playing like a mission and there's important dialogue happening and you're not reading it because you're fighting, enemies, like waves of enemies. So there's a lot of story that you're missing there. So that was the big issue with um with that. And it's something that could have easily been avoided if, they treated actors the way
Yeah.
they want to be treated and stuff like that. So that's a whole bigger encompassing thing that, voice actors have been fighting for a long time. So I'm glad that they're still trying to push forward and try to get better end results for themselves. But you know, coming back, Mecha Break, I think is very, very fun. Um, is a very action-packed multiplayer game that has surprisingly a lot of customization as far as how their mechs are, because they have a set list of mechs that are, you know, different types. Like you have your all-around kind of mech type. You have your heavy attack, heavy defense, sniper, support class. But within it, you can. heavily customize it, like giving it paint jobs and schemes to like make it your own. You have this whole mod system where you can kind of uh, change the values of your mech so it's so you can kind of customize it to more how your play style is. Um, the so where do I start? So there's two different modes as of right now. There's like a 6v6 mode, and
Oh, okay.
the new mode they introduced is more of a extraction mode, right?
Interesting.
So the 6v6 mode is kind of like the very standard kind of like 6v6 objective based mode. So you have your like payload delivery, you have your capture points, you have your you know, there's this one where you obtain like an energy core and you have to go deliver it to like a shuttle that's about to launch.
Okay.
So it's a lot objective based stuff. Whereas the new extraction mode is a team of three goes out onto this big map and it's a PvPvE style system where everybody drops randomly on the map. There's computer enemies that you fight, and you fight those to get loot, whether it be new mods, weapon schematics, materials and whatnot. That's where you would get a lot of that stuff from. But you have to extract in order to get all that stuff, and there's I want to say 5 to 6 other like 3-person teams fighting to get to the extraction point.
Okay.
And so it becomes this like, okay, you want to get out with the loot because that's how you upgrade your stuff, but you also have to make sure that you don't die because there's other people doing the same thing. And so it becomes this big like strategy kind of mech fighting game. And it's always so fun because me being like the big Gundam nerd, like this game is right up my alley
Nice.
because there's a lot of references to other like mech anime within the game. And I believe there's two like anime mech designers designing the mechs for this game. So like you can really see like the references from their work. Like you can see a little bit of like Gundam in there. You can see a little bit of Evangelion in
Okay.
there and kind of like seeing the influence. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. I got some friends to come play with me, so we were actually able to, do some teamwork and it's really, really cool. Right now it's only for Steam.
Okay.
So people with Steam can hop into it, but when it comes out, it is going to be coming out on Steam, Xbox, PlayStation. So everybody will get
Neat.
to play it.
I'm guessing it's a free to play.
Yes, it is definitely a free to play. Um, However, the beta right now, I think they're doing a good job with the beta just because at least when I logged in this time, they gave you enough of like the special currency to buy multiples of the like the higher end mechs. So you're able to kind of play around with what ha what you have available to you instead of just having like the first starter
All
ones that
right.
are easier to get. So hey, if anybody is very interested in like high paced impact like mech fighting, like check it out if you can. I so far there isn't an end date, so I'm assuming they might just play the beta up until release. So now is the perfect time to go check it out. I highly recommend checking it out.
Does it have a like a release slated or?
It's one of those vague ones where it's like sometime this year.
Okay.
Like their target is 2025. Um, but as the game plays right now, like sometimes like the server will get loaded, so there will be like a few seconds of like lag or a little bit of screen tearing, but like other than that, like I feel like the game plays really well right now. So they have to be, other than recording some more lines and stuff, I think they have to be somewhat close to it.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, I think it's funny how like yeah, I feel like maybe a game like this it just has this ongoing beta. Like they might kind of just casually be like, like, oh, and we're out now. Like, like I think Fortnite was in
Hmm.
early access for like years, and then it just like wasn't. But it was pretty much the full game for quite some time before they wanted
Hmm.
to make it official. Um, but yeah, that sounds cool. I'm pretty unfamiliar with like mechs and things. I guess the most familiarity I would have is like I have watched Evangelion. My good friend is like
Okay.
a big fan, and it's like one of his favorites, and he's like, you gotta watch it. And then we did do a little bit of just like pass the pad, uh, playing in our living room, doing what was it, Armor Core? Is it 6? Is that the most recent one?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's I thought it was pretty fun. I I think in a lot of ways like the sort of like mech genre doesn't appeal to me as much. I think I don't know. I guess it's a little bit of a different thing when you're talking about like
It's
a
a very
show or
niche
a
genre.
game. But yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, I think it's something I'm definitely not. It was definitely not a situation where I'm like, oh yeah, this definitely isn't for me. But it isn't like, oh, I need to go get more of that. It's like, oh, like for example, if I had some friends where like we're hopping into Mecha Break, I'd definitely be down to try it, but I probably wouldn't necessarily like seek it out on my own. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that sounds fun. I've definitely is that I want to say that's something that Andy's talked about before.
Yeah. 'Cause Andy did at least like a stream or two about
Okay.
with Mecha Break when it came out. I've seen him talk about it like here and there as well. But also, what I love more and more nowadays is that uh, I see a lot of Steam games are coming out in beta with full controller compatibility, which I
Ooh.
appreciate.
Yeah, I'm definitely
Because
a controller guy. Even after since getting a PC, I haven't really, if someone forces me to play mouse and keyboard, I guess, or like I don't know, there are some games that maybe lend themselves to like I'm more the like I'm not good, or like I don't really have that muscle memory for like shooters and stuff. It's more of like I'll play on mouse and keyboard if it's like a menu heavy game, something like I'll
like a point and click kind of
yeah,
game.
like I played Baldur's Gate 3 with mouse and keyboard. Um,
Oh yeah.
and then like I'll play like Minecraft, but pretty much anything else, like if it has controller support, that'll be what I'm trying to do.
It's like my fingers can't do it anymore, man.
Yeah, it could
I
get
tried
tough.
playing I tried playing the Steel Hunters beta when it was out, and then they only had mouse and keyboard, and I was like, brother, I can't do this. There's too many buttons to like try to figure out. I can't.
It's a lot. I am interested, if, especially like we'll see what actually is the functionality of the Switch 2, but I appreciate the thing that Tim's been pushing for forever, which is like the hybrid, like half a controller in one hand with just the mouse kind of style. Um,
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, I guess the other part about that for Mecha Break is like I've also not never played an extraction like shooter. I've
Okay.
heard of the concept, and like I've heard of like Escape from Tarkov and things like that, but I've never hopped in. That definitely seems like a gameplay mode that like I feel like even when you have it explained to you, like might not kind of fully click until you've tried it out, because it's like I still feel like I don't fully understand the game loop of like I get that it's kind of like
It's
battle royale esque, but with not only some PvE elements, but like getting out doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're the last one standing kind of thing.
yeah, because I don't have much experience with other extraction shooters. I've played a few, um, but at least for Mecha Break, how they do it is that there's multiple extraction points that unlock over time. So I feel like it's one of those things where it's like you can try to play it safe and wait until there's like less people in the game, or you try to be like one of the first ones to like get out. But like, you know, being involved like that quickly into a fight, like you're gonna be surrounded by every team that's playing in the same map. And I think like from what I remember, like just like playing like the Division or the Division 2, like they had their online kind of extraction kind of gameplay, which is kind of like extraction, but it's not the full game
Yeah.
where like you activate the extraction point and it just creates a beacon. It's like, hey everybody, someone's trying to, get out or get their stuff out. And so it creates this whole like storm of just bullets and chaos that ensues just trying to make sure you get your loot out in time.
I think it,
But
it it definitely sounds like something I definitely want to try. I'm
mhm.
interested of like it definitely seems like probably little bit more niche of like a genre compared to like maybe like a standard battle royale, but it does seem to like maybe yeah, like you're saying encourage those gunfights for or like depending on like which game you're talking about. If you're talking about just like a standard battle royale, you might get a lot of like people just hiding until the circle gets as small as it can
Yeah.
possibly be and everyone's gone.
Or you'll get this team that me and my friends fought the other day, where we were just minding our own business, like killing, NPCs to get loot, and all of a sudden over the mountain, another team just like dropped on us. And it's like, oh, it's like we're getting shot at from like above. Like, where is it? And there's like a sniper up on the mountaintop. Because, everybody's in the mech, so like their distance is like a lot farther than normal. And then we're focused on the sniper, and all of a sudden their two buddies just kind of like drop in and just destroy us. And it's like, what the happened?
Or
It's like
coordinated.
we were just.
Yeah, I guess you have that
It's one of
extra
those.
incentive for the loot, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where in the moment it's frustrating, but like after the fact you can appreciate how tactically like sound they were. It's like you guys did a good job.
It definitely sounds like a fun time. Um, yeah, other than that, I've really just kind of been hopping into games every now and then. Just like
Mm.
more Elden Ring. Been playing the seamless co-op uh, mod. My two friends that are just they're two people that I would consider to be like they're like obsessed. Like they're Souls games are their personality. um, which can help out in terms of like I don't have to necessarily like know what I'm doing. I can be kind of sherped through things. Um,
Mhm.
and we're kind of reaching, at least for me, the end of a lot of that because we did a lot of like base game stuff and then we just finished up doing like a co-op run of the DLC and so I think we're just kind of waiting for Night Rain now to be like a new
Mm.
fresh experience there. Um, I did watch what do they call it? It's Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Uh,
Oh yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I was kind of not that interested going in. I was just like, especially because the I don't know. I didn't hear much hype around it, and then the main Spider-Man actor made some strange comments leading into the launch of the show.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, uh, typically the way to get me in, even though the MC was like a mess, I'm still just like all in. I'm like, I want to see what they're doing. And so when you tell me it's like
Hmm.
has nothing to do with that, I'm like kind of less interested, even though I love Spider-Man. And I'm also just, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of art style is not the right word. It's more of like the animation style of like that kind of 3D trying to look like 2D kind of thing. I was a big fan of
Hmm.
like X-Men '97, which had some 3D elements, but it was largely like a 2D animated show. And
Yeah.
but I think it was still good. I think I would still give the leg up a little bit to like the animation style of What If, even though neither of them are like my favorite. But I don't think it's like bad or anything. I think I would have loved like the same aesthetic that they did for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, just like 2D. But I get that like I think especially in like the modern era,
Comic book style.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I thought
Yeah,
that was
I heard
pretty
a lot.
solid.
Yeah, I heard a lot of fun things about it. I haven't seen it yet myself. I intend to.
It's a quick watch, and also it's a quick release. I think I want to say it was the course of like 3 weeks. They just had three multi-episode drops. It was like
Oh,
each drop was
interesting.
2 or 3 episodes, which works out because it's like they're shorter episodes. They're definitely like sub 30 minutes. They're probably like more like the 20-minute range. I want to say I wasn't really
Mm,
paying that close attention, but they do some fun stuff. It's like even if it's not like I don't know what the is it 616 is like the prime MCU universe or whatever. I can't
yeah,
even though it's not like in that, it's they make a lot of references to like the MCU. Like this is like a you could say it's like a 616 adjacent world. So some of the stuff that happened in the MCU seems to have happened in this world, even if it's not the
they
same.
share some
For
similarities to.
sure. They make like
Okay.
references to like the Sokovia Accords and different things like that. But then like
Okay.
in this world, like I think you learn pretty like it's like they didn't, this Spider-Man does not know Iron Man, even though, but they're still out there. They talk about Iron Man and Captain America being people. They're just like the relationships are different, and it's pretty cool. And
Okay.
um, so yeah, I definitely think that's worth a watch for any Marvel or Spider-Man fans. And then don't have much to say about it, but I did just for we like I was saying, we were kind of looking for something else to play because we kind of exhausted Elden Ring. So uh, my friends and I all decided to pick up Fallout 76 last night.
Okay.
So we've only played like essentially the tutorial. But
Oh, okay.
it definitely seems like it could be a fun time, just kind of like a chill. You're just shooting stuff. You're getting those Fallout vibes, and it's kind of nice to be back in that world since I haven't really gone back or done much since Fallout 4, closer to around the time of that release. I didn't go back for
I've,
when the show came back. I know a lot of people were like jumping into Fallout 4 or 76 when the show came back. I
hmm.
haven't been back yet, even though, but yeah, I've definitely had the itch, especially since the show.
Have you stumbled upon any like day one players yet? Like high level players yet?
Oh, no, it's didn't run into too many players in general. I don't know, like I guess I still don't fully know how the like I don't know what you could like the lobby system works. But the few players I was stumbling across were like seemed to be beginners like us. They didn't even because they've got like a system now where you can just kind of skip to level 20 to kind of
Mm,
just get the ball rolling, I guess. And that seemed like the way to go, so we all did that. And then we were running into like level 14 players and just like people who didn't even do that. Um, uh, so yeah, we're still kind of like getting our feet wet, kind of like trying to see the gameplay loop. It's definitely interesting because like I kind of tried to play back in the day, but it was like I didn't have any friends to play with, and that was before they had any quests or anything. And it's like I kind of didn't really understand the game or didn't have much interest from that perspective. Where it's like this definitely seems like well, it might not be as deep as like a proper single player Fallout game. That there's like a definitely a lot of those same vibes you can get even if you want to just be a solo player. Like I think even though like Greg he got back at he like got into that and loved it. He largely talked about just playing it solo and then kind of hopping into different little parties but of just strangers in the game as opposed to like actually like having a crew. Um,
okay.
but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like I definitely heard about like the people who have been playing since launch and have these have all the resources and they're just giving it out to to new players. So I'm interested to explore more of that. But yeah,
Nice.
that's pretty much all the stuff I've been getting into. I haven't jumped in on Pokemon the trading card pocket. I was like uh almost like like uh it's like it's definitely one where I could see I feel like that one's definitely like
It's
it's like I'm all in or I'm not, right? Like I don't know if I can just kind of
hmm
like open some packs every now and then. It's like, oh, like at what point am I gonna start dropping money on this? So it's like,
the inevitable trap of a card game,
but
for
maybe
sure.
yeah, unless you've got some other stuff you've been copping, maybe we could uh, talk a little bit more about that and talk about like the Pokemon announcements.
Dude, I'm ready. I've been like bursting at the bit just to talk about Pokemon, so I'm ready to go.
Cool, yeah, like I've it's interesting because yeah, I definitely I watched the Pokemon Presents and but I've definitely been a little bit uh removed from the Pokemon fandom for a little bit, and part of that is because like my main sort of experience has always just been the mainline games, and so not having a Nintendo console for a while, I've missed out on a lot of that. My last time being like super in was Black and White. Um,
Oh, hmm
I played a lot of Black and White. Uh, and then I loved the show when I was a kid. I never really kept up with it. I do want to. I watched that Pokemon Concierge. It just looks so cute,
Oh yeah.
and they've got new episodes of that coming in I think September. They
September, I
said.
think.
The
Yeah.
but the thing that I guess it was the standout announcement was the Pokemon Champions. Was it?
Yeah, I was surprised by that because there's been rumors like leading up to Pokemon Day where it's like, oh, they're thinking about making a dedicated battling game for Pokemon because Pokemon, the Pokemon Company runs in a kind of a predicted cycle for the longest time where they come with a mainline game, maybe like 2 years or so, they'd come out with a remake, and they'd have like side games like sprinkle out like along there. But there was always a new game every like 2 years that would transition the battling mechanics that they would use for the championships, right?
Okay.
And so when Legends came out, Legends Arceus came out, and then the Diamond and Pearl remakes came out. Uh, Legends was a completely different game. You couldn't, there wasn't really much of a battling like multiplayer thing in there, so you couldn't use that. And then Diamond and Pearl had battling, but it was restricted to the Pokemon that are only available in Diamond and Pearl. So it shrunk the amount of Pokemon you could use, so they didn't use it. So instead, they kept Sword and Shield on for another year over
Okay.
the normal. So a lot of people complained about that because, okay, this has been like 3 years now. We're dealing with the same Pokemon. Like, there isn't anything new to add to the games because they're not adding anything new to Sword and Shield. So the competitive scene had to really kind of dig deep to figure out a way to make it interesting for another year. So the speculation was like, okay, well, if this is their new kind of release schedule, why not make a dedicated battling game so that no matter what game comes out that year, you could fall back on this to dictate the competitive scene. And so, lo and behold, they did it. And so now Pokemon Champions is speculated to be what the competitive scene is going to use from here on going because they've already confirmed that it's going to have connectivity to Pokemon Home, so people are going to be able to transfer their Pokemon into the game. Um, I'm sure when newer games come out, they'll be able to update the game and put in more Pokemon because they've already shown through the trailer that they're going to be using the mechanics from Scarlet and Violet, and they're going to be allowing Mega Evolution that's returning in Legend ZA. So they're already showing that they're going to be able to update the mechanics of champions to follow with what's the most recent releases.
Gotcha.
And in that way, they don't have to worry about putting multiplayer into these other games that aren't the mainline games. They could just
Yeah.
be like, okay, we introduced new Pokemon here. Okay, just transfer them into champions, and here you go. Have your team ready for regionals or for worlds. You know, here you go, and we'll just use that. So I honestly think it's a really good idea because it sets them up so that they don't have to keep to the schedule that they used to have in the past. So like now we can have a Legends game, we can have a dedicated remake game, and then have the mainline game that comes out and it introduces a whole bunch of new mechanics that they can adopt and update through Champions. So I think it was a really smart idea that they went through with it. And the fact that it's also going to be on mobile,
Oh yeah,
so you don't
that's
even need a Switch. You could just put it on your phone and play that way, which I think is really smart.
that'll be interesting to see, I guess, kind of like what the base game offers. Like, like, are the people who have Pokemon to transfer gonna have like a leg up on getting a variety of Pokemon, or like how it will it be for someone who just has nothing else and is just playing champions? That'll be interesting because I'm definitely
That'll
gonna
be
hop
interesting.
in. I think that would be a fun way to get back into Pokemon, and I guess I don't know. I'm just especially because it's like a mobile SKU. I'm assuming that it's a free thing, but that might not. I mean, you would. I don't know because it's like a console. I
It
really
could.
don't know. I feel like it could go either way. It could be like a cheap. I definitely don't think it's gonna be like some $70 game, but like I could see it being
Mhm.
$20 or something.
Yeah, like something that just gets their foot in the door, and then down the line, maybe they could, figure out another way to get money circulating. But I think Pokemon Company's been pretty good about making things make sense as far as cost wise. Because, like I was talking about before, Pokemon Home um, is a service that is literally just storing your Pokemon on a server, and you can just transition that. And I think people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Pokemon Home's like only like $3 a month.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, that makes sense because like you're storing like years worth of Pokemon onto like this, server. So it's like, yeah, just, a couple bucks and then you're good. Um, but you did bring up a good point. I am curious of how champions will deal with newcomers if it relies on you playing like the console games at all, or if maybe they could implement a way, kind of like how Pokemon Stadium did, where they had the rental Pokemon that you could choose from that were
Oh,
just like
interesting.
ready to battle. It's like, okay, you can rent this team and go on and play. And like, maybe if there's a challenge course that people can go on to, so it's not just all multiplayer. Like you can do like ladders of, NPC battles that maybe would get you like a, you know, points or something, or like a like special reward if you complete it or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
We
it'll
have
be
to find out.
interesting because now that we're talking about it, I feel like I am very curious to see, like, I guess what their plans are, even just to monetize it. Because obviously, like, I don't think it's like I guess I don't really know because there's so many different Pokemon games out there, but it doesn't seem like it would be the traditional like free to play where like buying cosmetics for the Pokemon. But I'm pretty sure you do that in Pokemon Unite. I think you buy like cosmetics and stuff. I don't know much about it, but
Well, I was just gonna say because they did show that your trainers will be visible during battle. So
okay, so maybe the
trainer
trainers.
customization right there. That could be a revenue point for them.
And then because I almost
Making
wonder
trainers with you.
like if they're not gonna charge either anything or very much for like the game itself, if perhaps that is the model of like they want you to play the other games to get Pokemon to put in because like, I think this you can even take
Mhm.
Pokemon from like Pokemon Go, right? And so
Yeah,
like maybe they're like, oh, like if you don't have a Switch or whatever, you don't have Pokemon, go play Pokemon Go, go catch some Pokemon, and then come play Champions, kind of a thing.
yeah, they definitely could do that.
But that'll be
It's
interesting.
it's gonna yeah, because I don't think they have a hard release day on this either. I think they said maybe like sometime soon it'll release, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. It definitely will not be used this year for Worlds. Like I think this year will be the last year for Scarlet and Violet
Okay.
for Worlds, and then probably next year Champions will be the next thing that will take over. We'll see.
Yeah, that'll be it definitely seems like to some extent the Pokemon I guess like structure or just like timeline of releases is being shaken up because with champions and then just like legends seem to be like a new SKU that they want to take seriously and have going forward. And I don't know
Hmm.
um if we just had no idea what the vibes were, like if was there anyone expecting that we would get information about Gen 10 at this, or did we definitely know that that was like not till next year?
I think there's some people that were hoping for maybe some Gen 10 news of some sort, but I know personally for me, I knew that wasn't going to be the case just because we didn't know anything about ZA at all up until this point. And so I think they really wanted to focus on just ZA for this year. And then next year is their 30th anniversary. So I think
Mm,
then would be the perfect time to introduce Gen 10 because it's like 10's a big number, 30's a big number. It makes sense to kind of put them together for, a big presentation because like, hey, this is our 30th anniversary. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. And oh, by the way, here's you know, the 10th generation of Pokemon. This is like a big milestone for the Pokemon company.
for sure. When did
Now,
or yeah, go for it if you.
oh, no, 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 go for it, go for it.
I was curious when. I guess or the Diamond and Pearl remakes the most recent remakes.
Yes.
When did those come out?
And those came out like with it. So, oof. Um, I'm gonna look it up real quick, but I do remember that they came out within months of Legends Arceus.
Okay. So I'm almost wondering
Brilliant
like
Diamond.
not that they'll never do more remakes, but in terms of the cadence, I almost wonder if they're shifting to a new gen Legends game as opposed to new gen like remake, and that not maybe like their
Mhm.
remakes won't be as like on a like 2 year cycle kind of thing, but I don't know.
Right. So, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl came out November 19th of 2021,
Ooh, okay.
and Legends Arceus do, came out January 28th of 2022. So literally 2 months apart, they were released. And I remember that was a really rough patch. I think it was a lesson that Pokemon Company learned because Diamond and Pearl Remix came out. It made a lot of money. It sold a lot of copies, but the reception of those games was not positive. Um, as far as what remake, because usually for Pokemon remakes, it's an update to the original game, so it's like a graphical update. They implement a whole bunch of new stuff that kind of like is a quality of life improvements.
Okay.
Usually they'll add like the third version content in it, so it's like you would have, let's
Oh, like
say
platinum.
like Platinum Crystal, kind of like those like third versions of the game would be implemented into the remakes. But since this Diamond and Pearl was the first remake not made by Game Freak, it was made by another
Oh, I had
studio.
no idea.
Yeah, it was a new studio that started working with the Pokemon company. Ilka is the people that made the remakes. They went the route where it was a dedicated one for one remake of Diamond
Okay.
and Pearl. So it was no quality of life improvements, no addition of platinum. It was just Diamond and Pearl, but with the new art style, which I know a lot of people kind of complain about the art style. I thought it was cute. because it's a 3D version of like the little chibi like old school Pokemon models and stuff like that. I thought it was cute, but it had the same problems that plagued Diamond and Pearl back in the day, and so it's just like, okay, well, I don't want to play base Diamond and Pearl again. I want to play like a souped up version of it. So it was a kind of a weird thing. So
That makes sense. That's
um
interesting.
yeah,
Because
like
I've
I
never played um I guess a generation twice, right? I've either played like the original or I've played the remake. I've never played like both versions of one. Like I Heart Gold and Soul Silver was my first time playing Gold and Silver. Never played the original, and then
okay.
like same for kind of Fire Red, Leaf Green. I did play Pokemon Yellow back in the day, but that was like I was so young and I like barely knew how to like read and play the game, and it's so vague. And then I did play Diamond and Pearl, but haven't didn't play like the remake.
Mhm. But yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to see because I want the black and white remake to come out because I love those games too. Like those some of my favorite Pokemon games. But if I just had to kind of do like my quarterback like prediction, we probably won't see the black and white remake for like another 3 years.
Okay.
Or I'll be more maybe like 2 to 3 years.
Do you think that's
Because
like definitely where they're going, or do you think there's any chance they do like some sort of Let's Go thing for Johto?
I mean that'd be cool too. Because Let's Go games were cool. It was like an interesting like melding of mainline and the Pokemon Go mechanics. So I'd be down for a Johto Let's Go as well. But just like thinking about how Pokemon Company does their things, you normally don't get a remake more than once a generation. Because like
Uh,
you had the Fire Red and Leaf Green on Game Boy Advance. You had Heart Gold and Soul Silver on the DS. You had Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire on the 3DS. And then we got the Diamond and Pearl remakes on the Switch. So I think we probably will not get the black and white remakes until the Switch 2 is fully out and has been around for at least a year. Because I honestly believe that the 10th gen will be a Switch 2 game.
I would
Like
hope so.
Legends ZA will be that branch between Switch and Switch 2, and then Gen 10 will be the first like Switch 2 Pokemon game, and then that game will dictate how black and white remakes look. At least is my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like a good prediction. I'm get curious, like since Black and White didn't ever really have like the third game, they had sequels like Black and White 2. I
The first sequel game.
Yeah, I wonder like what they would do with like a remake. Would they try to do like some sort of like reimagining like in between it's trying to do all four, or it might just be the first two and we're just gonna call it a day, or like I don't know.
I think it would be interesting if they tried to pull a gold silver kind of thing where you play the story of black and white like fully like from beginning to end, and then once you hit the end of that they rework and tie in the story of black and white 2 towards like, okay, you beat Team Galactic, or not Team Galactic, you beat Team Plasma. You know, you think that they're gone away, but guess what? Uh, all of a sudden, you know, one city's been frozen over. Everything is kind of like going into chaos. You kind of have to, figure out what's going on, and then you have the whole like Kyurem storyline, and the other gyms start to open up, so you can kind of go back and like fight the new gyms that were introduced in Black and White too. And so it's like, hey, you're the champion now. You need to figure out what's going on here because everything's like going into chaos. So and to kind of like push that forward. I think it would be an interesting thing if they were able to work that story in a new direction instead of being like, oh, you're a new character, you know, here, go back into the world.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Like I'm surprised they've never done that again, right? The whole like gold and silver thing where you go back to Kanto. Like I don't think that was like a one-off thing that they did, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
people love
they
it.
never really kind of touched on that. I get like I've seen like things of them trying to do similar things to that, but like Gold and Silver like remains like that one game where it's like we're just going to give you two games in one. It's like the go like here, go experience the world again through a different set of eyes. I think like the only other Pokemon game that I can like think of that tried to rework the world was Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where it was roughly the same game, but then they started to throw in like the Team Rainbow Rocket kind of storyline, and it kind of totally it was like a director's cut of the game where like the complete last half of the game was just completely reworked and like altered compared to Sun
Interesting.
and Moon.
Because they're kind of
Um,
it's been quite some time since they've just done like the third game, right? Like the crystal or the
well, yeah,
platinum. Was it platinum? Was that the
because
last one? Because they didn't do like a Z, right? Like X.
no, X and Y just kind of like came and went. Yeah, so like yeah, that was the last time they kind of ever did like a dedicated third version. It's always been like the Black and White 2, you had Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and now they just do DLC
Oh
for the
yeah, I
game.
guess that's a good
Like
point. I
Sword and
forget that.
Shield, Scarlet and Violet just had DLC.
It's
So,
definitely like a. I mean, it sounds like a probably what a maybe preferred option instead of like having to like buy another copy of the game or like play like a mostly same game again that's a little different. Just add on to your save in the game you've
oh
already been
yeah.
playing.
Oh yeah.
Especially
Get
just
to keep your same Pokemon and all your progress. Yeah. I think the advent of DLC, at least for Pokemon, has been an overall positive for sure because it's like you get to spend less than a full game and then like you were just saying like you get to keep just keep going on your story in the game.
uh, yeah, that'll be so interesting of like so usually how it goes is like whatever the most recent gen is like that's what's going to be at the Pokemon championships and it'll be interesting of like
Hmm.
you were saying of like this Pokemon champions might take that over. Do you think that'll be like the new standard or that it'll eventually be like it'll just be alongside whatever the most recent gen is as well?
I mean, as long as they work it the way I think it's going to work, where like every time a new game comes out, they just update champions and they just allow those
Yeah.
Pokemon to come in and alter it because there's always going to be guidelines of like, okay, you can only use like this certain Pokemon, like some like legendaries are like banned from competition because they're just very OP and very like broken. So there's always going to be guidelines like that. But as far as just like what comes in, like, yeah, like if they just update it the way that I believe it should, when Gen 10 does come, you get, okay, Gen 10 Pokemon are now available in Champions, bring them in and just like set your teams up. And I think it would be very interesting because it then opens up way more because ever since Sword and Shield, the big hot debate online was like they don't allow us to get all these Pokemon in anymore. The get like the Pokemon, there's too many Pokemon
Yeah.
and they all can't fit into one game anymore because of the, having to process all the 3D models and like, making sure it has enough like processing power. And of course, like, as you know, people like to complain about the Pokemon games not looking good. Just imagine what they would look like if they smashed in over 1,000 Pokemon into one game. It's gonna bog down the system super, super hard.
Yeah.
But I think with champions, when it's just dedicated to battling, there isn't the extra stuff of having to create that open world, having to create all of these assets that aren't in aren't involved in the battle system at all. I think it creates an opportunity where we can see, um, Scarlet and Violet Pokemon. We can see Legends, Arceus Legends, ZA Pokemon. We can see Gen 10 Pokemon. We can see Black and White remake Pokemon all together for could what could possibly be the most interesting time in competitive because there'd be so much variety at that point. Like it could be so ridiculous but so amazing at the same time because you could have mechanics from multiple games playing at the same time. Like they showed off in the trailer, you had like the terrestrialization from Scarlet and Violet, but then you had the Mega Evolution as well. So, you know, if they start adding in more and more games, you could see like whatever gimmicks come out down the line, and you could bring more gimmicks back when more remakes come out. So it's a big unknown, but it has the biggest possibility out of any Pokemon game, I think.
Rad. Yeah, that definitely sounds cool. It'll be, yeah, I imagine that that'll probably be perhaps one of the ways that they encourage you to want to play the new game of like, oh, if you want the Gen 10
Oh, for sure.
Pokemon in Champions, you gotta go get buy the new game.
Hmm.
And but yeah, I'm definitely excited for that. It definitely seems like a bit of a new direction, generally speaking, for Pokemon with like Legends and stuff too. Um, I don't know much about like Legends Arceus, and people seemed to
Okay.
enjoy that. Uh, and like
Legend
yeah, I don't know
Legend
what
Arceus
the full
is
vibes on were.
Legend Arceus is an interesting game by the fact that it completely changed the idea of what a Pokemon game could be. Because like playing a Pokemon game, like anybody could play any Pokemon game, and then you could just imagine what it would be like to be in that world more than just being like the over the top like 2D plane or like the kind of 3D models that they have nowadays. But for me, what was interesting about Legends Arceus was the roaming around like open zones and be able to just throw a Pokeball and catch a Pokemon. Like you don't have to go into like the whole like battle transition where you're on this field and you're looking at your Pokemon from like the distance. Like no, you could be in the world, throw a Pokeball, catch it. And it's like you're just there live in the world, like catching like throwing Pokeballs left and right, catching Pokemon. Interacting with them that way was really intriguing. Um, with ZA, it seems like they are just kind of continuing that trend. Uh, Again, we haven't seen much of it yet. We've seen bits of it, so I don't know if there's gonna what newer things are gonna add on to that. Um, I will say one thing I noticed in the trailer for ZA is that they're implementing the mechanic from Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. Or I don't remember. You played that, right? Or
I
did
actually
you?
haven't.
Okay, so in Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, it was the cross between mainline to Let's Go, right? So it was the same mechanic where you would throw the Pokeball like you would in Pokemon Go to catch the Pokemon. What they did for that game though is that normally in the Pokemon game you would knock out the Pokemon and it would faint and it would go away. And it's like, oh crap, I can't catch that Pokemon. It fainted. What Let's Go did is that if you knocked out the Pokemon, it puts you into the state like Pokemon Go where you're able to catch the Pokemon.
Okay.
So seeing the trailer from ZA, it looks like that they're implementing that system into it. So even if you knock out the Pokemon, you have an opportunity to throw your Pokeball at it, which I think is very good because it doesn't make sense to be in a world like that, where if you were to knock out the Pokemon, it would just disappear and go away. Like, obviously, it would still be there because you're in, like, you didn't leave the world. You're still in that open world situation. Uh, so that's a cool little update that they're adding onto it. Personally, for me, I am one of the biggest haters of the battle system in Legends Arceus. I thought it was not fun at all. It is very nice to see that ZA is going to be doing a little bit more of this open, like this kind of more actiony
So
kind of
yeah, like
gameplay.
the the battle, like the placement of you on the battle, it's like
It's
gonna
like
matter.
real-time battling. Yeah. So like your Pokemon's gonna be able to follow you, so you're gonna be able to like do placements, and then your Pokemon's moves are like on like a cooldown timer. So you'll be able to do a move, but then it'll have like a, it'll cool down, kind of like in any other kind of like action RPG kind of game. So it's literally, at least from what it seems like, it looks like it's going to be not Dark Souls-esque, but like it's going to have a little bit more strategy involved, because it's not going to just be like, oh, your opponent attacked you, oh, it missed because of points values. It's like, no, it's going to hit or miss based on you moving out of the way.
Yeah,
uh, which I think is very, very cool, because I think that's something that a lot of people have thought about for a while that would be very interesting for the Pokemon games, where uh, you you have to think more like the anime than you would the RPG, which I think Legends is making it like a welcome like addition, like having the difference between mainline and Legends, as the Legends is going to be more kind of action oriented, or at least like a little bit more um I guess action is like a best way to put it, like action oriented gameplay, whereas the turn-based gameplay of like the main line,
yeah, it's
um
interesting to see like if they kind of lock into like a style or if they kind of generally use Legends as like an experimentation thing where they're like trying new stuff
yeah,
all the time. I
which
thought
I
it
think
was,
is going to be really good.
yeah, I think it definitely seems like a new, fresh, uh, just like another fresh option for like something that's like not just it's still very much kind of more akin to uh traditional Pokemon game. It's not like a totally different kind of spin-off thing like a Pokemon Dungeons or something, mystery dungeon thing. It's like still we're
Yeah.
catching Pokemon and battling and stuff, but it is different.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, man, if Legends keeps continuing, this is like a perfect way to reintroduce old locations, you know. Like Legends Arceus is a little bit weird because they released the remakes like so close together. So it's like, oh, you know, you have the remake, so you're in Sinnoh again, but then like Legends Arceus is like the Sinnoh of the past. It's like, so you see ancient times. So it's a little bit different, where ZA is like, hey, this is like soon after X and Y. So it's still like in the present, but you're getting to be reintroduced to this location again through a different lens, where before it's like, yeah, you can go to Lumio City in X and Y, and it was a pretty big city, but it was big for, Pokemon. So you could run around a little bit, but then there's wasn't a lot to do. Where now you get to experience this city in like grand scale. Like this whole city is your map, and is going to be 10 times bigger than what you experienced it like a decade ago. And so I think having this new Legend series creates like cooler opportunities to deep dive into some of these older locations and have people experience that world through a different point of view. Um, and of course, for monetary reasons, they could also like make a bunch of merchandise off of old stuff again too, and make
For
it
sure.
make it popular again.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like uh, some things to be excited about in the Pokemon world. I did think it was strange. I don't know what Arceus did, but I thought it was strange that we had for the starters for ZA that it's two. Sinnoh starters or Johto starters rather.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was like, oh, cynical got in the last game, so it's like we need to shine these two, Chicory and Totodile up a little bit. And since we already used cynical, let's throw a Tepig in there, which for me, I'm a big Tepig fan, so I am happy as all could be to have that little
nice.
pig in the game. But oh no, what was it? Oh, I wish I had. Actually, I might still have it. I saw this meme earlier today, but it was a fan art of somebody. It was Chicory and Toad. I was like, hey, it's like, where's Cynical? I don't know. It's like, where is he? He's like, oh, I don't know. And then it pans down, and one of the big things in Legends Arceus is where there's distortions. Um,
Okay.
and so it's this little like Cynical like in the middle of a space distortion. It's like, oh my God, what's happening? It's just freaking out.
Poor Cyndaquil.
Poor Cynical.
What were the other starters for Arceus?
It was Rowlet and Oshawott.
Okay.
And what was cool is that because it was based in like the ancient past, their final evolution was different. Because like in the
Oh,
more recent games, they've had like like regional variants of Pokemon. Because it's like this Pokemon's not native to here, so it had to adapt to its new environment. So its evolution changed. And so they did that for the starters of Arceus, where they all got regional variants that changed their typing. It's like Samurott was like a dark type Pokemon, and um Typhlosion was like part ghost. And it's like, oh, this is pretty sick. Um, I don't know if they'll do it for ZA because it's too in the present of mainline Pokemon, but I think that's why they're bringing back Mega Evolutions. So
okay.
I think I think the starters will get um mega evolutions for the first time. Or like these sets of starters will get mega evolutions for the first time. It's like, oh, we found these new mega stones. Here, try it on your starter Pokemon. It's like, oh, cool. We get a mega Meganium or a mega Feraligatr. You
That'll
know,
be
we'll
fun to
get stuff like
see.
that. Although I am going to see because in Legend Arceus you're able to catch the Sinnoh starters since they weren't options in the beginning, so you're able to catch them in the wild. So I'm wondering if you'll be able to catch the X and Y starters in the wild, and if they get mega evolutions, because in X and Y, your starters did not get mega evolutions for some reason. Like the Kanto starters did, and the Hoenn starters did, but the
They
starters
just
of the own game never
that's
got megas.
that's
So,
a bit of a strange choice for sure.
yeah. So it's like, will they keep throwing shade to to the X and Y starters in Legends ZA or not? It's yet to be seen.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I know. I guess the one thing, last thing I'd like to touch on as far as Pokemon is like it definitely. I think for a lot of people, it got the vibe that like there probably isn't going to be any sort of like automatic way. Like it very much looks like a Switch One game, even though it'll come out.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
I guess we don't know when the Switch Two is coming out for sure. Just this year, we don't know how close to the launch it is, but it like a lot of people are like, oh, if there was a Switch 2 SKU or if there was some sort of Switch 2 like uh, enhancement of Switch 1 games that we would be like seeing that, and it doesn't, it doesn't really seem like that is the case, but we'll have to see. Like I get the vibe that it'll be like a case by case, like they'll have to update it manually. Like we might get an updated version of like Breath of the Wild or whatever, but that the Switch 2 might not necessarily be able to do any sort of like
yeah.
automatic boosting on its own. But I don't know.
I can't remember who mentioned it. It might have been Tim that mentioned it during the Pokemon Day stuff. I kind of don't think that we will get like a dedicated Switch 2 version of Legends ZA because I assume that this this was in development like way before like Pokemon Company could have gotten their hands on like a dev kit for the Switch 2, I assume. Um, so I think either they'll probably release like an update in the future that's for the Switch 2, or it'll just get a little bit better just based off of the processor of the Switch 2. So it's like
Yeah.
just putting in an old game will automatically get a bump because of the newer technology and also the like the DDLS of their graphics card that's going to be implemented into the Switch 2. Uh, will probably boost it up a little bit more, but I don't see it being a Breath of the Wild type of thing where it's like, oh, there's two SKUs for the same game, one or the other. I think as much as I love Pokemon and as much as I love their games, I know that Game Freak isn't that kind of company where they can dedicate their time on two different SKUs of the game
Mm.
because we just have to look at Scarlet and Violet. And I love that game, but I cannot deny those frames be skipping.
For sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to. I'm so ready to know like really what the Switch 2 is all about and get like a release date.
Same. Like
Um,
we are like a month away at this point from the Switch 2 being fully revealed
when
to us,
is I
like
know it's April, but
mechanically.
I
I
can't
believe
remember.
it's
It's
April 2nd.
okay, okay. Thank God. Thank God it's an April Fool's Day. They can't pull some
Switch
weird stuff.
2. Let me just do some supercomputer research. Oh yeah, so it's literally not to date this recording, but it's literally a month from this recording
Okay,
is going to be the direct for the Switch 2.
that's exciting. Can't wait for
I
that.
can't wait. I can't wait. I want them to get super like in the weeds with what the Switch 2 can do. I think they need to do that.
Yeah, I
Like
think
I,
they
I
they they have to.
like if it was like a 20-minute direct, I want 18 minutes of that direct just like talking about what the Switch 2 is going to be able to do. And then the last 2 minutes can just be a snapshot of like the games that are coming out for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
It's just like
mhm.
yeah, I would just I'm yeah very excited to see like what it can do, what the launch lineup looks like, and everything, and then yeah, I imagine just because generally speaking in games we've been in an era for a while of things kind of having that backwards compatibility. I imagine there will be like the last kind of trickle out of like just getting a bunch of probably like Switch 1 games that you'll can still play on your Switch 2, but that like games that
Yeah.
were already in development and kind of things like that. I'm sure we'll
Mhm.
have perhaps some stuff we didn't know about that you just to like pad that out as in addition to some Switch 2 games. Um, but yeah, I definitely can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a new era for Nintendo as a company being able to have a system that can go back to not only having it be a backwards compatible, but it seems like they're getting, even though they're taking their sweet time, they're getting more and more into the digital age as far as like being able to have a library of digital games that you can access no matter what console you have. um, Having the online functionalities be a little bit more modern, even though for Nintendo's sake, it's still kind of in the past because I'm looking at you, Switch app. I'm looking at you. Uh, so yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what they have up their sleeve come April.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I'm kind of I don't know, yeah, this could be maybe a bit of a segue into just like talking about other stuff in the games industry, but I'm excited to just I want to like fully dive in on Nintendo stuff as someone who just my broader gaming history is definitely lighter on the Nintendo stuff, and especially in recent years. Like I've never owned that many home consoles, but I've always had I had a Game Boy Advance and a DS, and would play the mainline Pokemon games for a long time, and I've just been kind of separated from Nintendo for some time, and I feel like with so many games being you know canceled, studios being shuttered, things being in a weird place, and especially with uh, you know, indies being such a great thing these days, and the Switch being a great console for indies. I'm so ready to just dive in and get back to that stuff of like when it comes to things like Mario and Zelda, I'm still really much not in the know and haven't played much of it, and then you know, Pokemon is more of a lapped thing where I definitely want to get back to Pokemon, and I'm excited that I'll have some ways to do that even before I'm able to get a Switch. Like I think I'm definitely gonna be hopping in and opening some card packs because I didn't know during the Pokemon presents I didn't know like I'd never seen what it looked I didn't know how like satisfying it looked to like actually open a card
Oh,
pack.
dude,
I'm
man,
like I'm like oh man I want to do it right now. So
see, they knew what they were doing. They knew the perfect ways to get people addicted to this game. It's
for
the sweet
sure
like,
they
ooh, it's just
they
the oh, and when you get a good pack and it has that little extra like flair that comes up after ripping the pack, ooh, baby,
yeah
ooh, they get you hard.
they're in full swing. I can't like this just makes me think about because I feel like we're even people who are not just in on Pokemon already. It's like we've got I totally forgot about the like they've been doing the Pokemon card Happy Meals too
Oh yeah,
recently. And so like I kind of am like really interested to see like what kind of stuff they do for the 30th anniversary.
it's gonna be wild, and there's gonna be a bunch of adults that raid Targets and Walmarts
For
and
sure.
Costco's. Uh, yeah, I'm not too proud of some people right now as far as Pokemon cards go, but I'm more and more getting stuck into the digital era, so I'm sitting home happy with my digital cardboard.
Fair enough. But yeah, I guess to shift a bit from that, as I was kind of mentioning, with like, I feel like Nintendo's kind of, especially for a long time, kind of been doing their own thing. I feel like I'm not too worried about Nintendo in terms of like their just success as a video game company. They they see just crazy loyalty and crazy success with a lot of their stuff, and it's so interesting when if anytime you want to have a conversation about the video game industry as a whole, you kind of have to like put Nintendo on an island and be like, oh, but except for them, whether they're doing good or bad or
They're
where
doing
it's at,
fine.
it's like obviously things for everyone else were probably doing really well when the Wii U was not doing well for them, but it's like there's those like shifts. But yeah, I think I'll just jump into it. Of like I think probably the most significant news that's happened since our last episode is the WB Games news of
Oh
just
boy.
really painful to hear about some not only did Wonder Woman get canceled but they shuttered 3 studios and yeah it's just like definitely I want to say yeah it's definitely like the one of the biggest kind of hits we've seen in recent times especially for um I would say like a publisher that in the past has put out some pretty well regarded games and then like just I feel like we've definitely been on a decline since like Suicide Squad and maybe even a little before that and then it kind of seemed like oh maybe they might get back to putting out some good titles like regardless of not if you're into it like Hogwarts Legacy did really well and a lot of people might argue as to whether that gave them false expectations on how well a game could do since it did the Harry Potter fan base is a bit of an anomaly and might have really just kind of boosted that in a way that it's kind of hard for other games to do but yeah it was tough like I'm someone who really liked Shadow of Mordor. I never played Shadow of War. I always was meaning to, and I hope to still do that at some point. But I thought Shadow of
Those games
Mordor
were fun.
was such a good game. I was and I'm my DC knowledge is definitely lesser than my Marvel knowledge, but generally speaking, I'm just a superhero nerd, and so like I'm like a Wonder Woman game from those same devs. Like, give it to me. I would love to play that. And
Hmm.
I also not I guess recently before it got shut down, but more towards the launch, I was getting into multiverses, and checking that out, and
Oh,
uh, I was actually one of the people that like got the whole like founders pack of like it was like $100.
I
I was all in,
oh, you got the $100 one. Oh man,
and then oh hey, surprise, we're gonna unlaunch the game.
that was this. So I need to step on my soapbox for a second. So the whole multiverses thing happened, right? And it came out, and it was, you know, there were some bugs and stuff, but it was generally positive, right? It was doing really well. So was the point that it won a game award for like new fighting game and stuff like that. And then, like you were saying, they were like, "Oh, the beta test is over," and it's like, but it was a full release already. It was 1.0. It was not a beta,
Yeah,
and they like went away for almost like a year and a half, I think. And like it's just such a tragedy because it came out again and it wasn't any better. And I couldn't help but think, but like, man, this was like some studio meddling because like Multiverses was already on a good foot, and then they were told to transition into Unreal 5, and it messed up how the game worked because it wasn't playing the same way it used to, and it kind of ruined a lot of the fan perception of the game. And it did for me because I was one of those people like you. I joined the founders one, but not the $100 one. But I did get in on the founders edition of the game because I thought it was like, oh, this is actually a Smash Brothers clone that doesn't suck, and it has a lot of interesting IP because it's Warner Brothers. You can kind of dip into a lot of weird stuff. Um, Even LeBron James, which was fun. Uh, but yeah, it's just unfortunate because I feel like if Multiverses came out the first time and was left alone and they were just allowed to keep updating the game and like smooth it out, I think it could have been a way better success than it turned it out to be.
I agree.
Because I don't know. It's just one of those unfortunate stories that we keep seeing and seeing where it's like this game could have been good if it wasn't for the executive meddling that always happens.
For sure. And like I never did a deep dive in terms of like what was different when it came back. I just remember like I don't know. I think it was one of those. I was definitely in a weird place in my life when that was coming out. And I'm just like I wanted something new to play, and I'm like it was like I'm sure a lot of people are like this. I'm like, man, I'm craving Smash. I don't have a Switch. And a lot of Smash clones suck, but this one doesn't seem to suck, and I do care a lot about uh, these like different IPs. Like I loved Batman and a lot of the characters they had in there. I mean, they did the Iron Giant is so random and cool. It's just like
Yeah,
and
right?
I remember it being good enough, like better than just like something that I felt like I was
Yeah.
just gonna play for a couple weeks. Like I'm like I this could be in the rotation. I could see myself coming back to this, and I'm like they're gonna release new characters and they're gonna get better. And I was like, I felt like the core there was solid. And say what you will about like it maybe not be definitely not being as good as Smash Brothers, but on the flip side, it probably definitely had better online play than Smash Brothers.
Oh, 100%.
And so
The
that's like a
the
different
original
element.
version, the original version of the game actually had pretty good netcode for what it was. not saying it didn't hiccup every now and again, but like compared to like a Nickelodeon All-Star Battle, it did pretty well for itself. But it was the transition from to Unreal 5 that I think hurt it the most, just because it was trying to put the game that it was into Unreal 5, and everything just didn't communicate properly. Like the game felt slower, it felt
Mm,
sluggish, it felt like things were not firing off the way that they used to when the initial release came out. Um, and people recognized it, and it started getting, like more and more mixed reviews, and like people started dropping off a lot faster to the point where now, season 5 is the last season, and Player First Studios is gone. It is done for.
it's it's a real shame, and it's like again, like a lot of the times when people like uh maybe a big change happens to a game and they're like counting frames and doing all this stuff, like a lot of the times, like if a game feels different for me, I can feel that it's different even about though I may not be able to pinpoint it. And it was like I can't remember quite how many months it was between like that hiatus period, but I remember I'm like, oh, multiverses is back. I've got all these. I can have every character in the game because I have all these tokens. Because I was like a founder. I'm like, let's finally get back into this. And I think I was hopping back in when they introduced the Powerpuff Girls, and I thought like
Oh,
the interesting thing was like I felt like the passion from the team and like the creativity was still there. I'm like mechanically, I'm like
oh,
this
for
the
sure.
Powerpuff Girls were so interesting. Like oh you can switch between all three of them, and they're all three just one character, one like playable like sort of entity.
Oh, nice.
And I was like this is really fun. I'm like I really like the mechanics. I really like how this all works, but like the game doesn't feel as good. I'm like, there's something about this. Like, I don't
Mm-mm.
feel the drive to like play this as much as like I was wanting. I was before, and I'm like, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And initially before I would actually hear like the news and people talk about it, I thought it was just like a me thing. I'm like, oh, do I like did people get better at this game and I suck and that's why I'm not having fun? But I was like, even doing like challenges or fighting bots, I was like the whole thing. I'm like, there's just something not quite right
It's
here.
off.
And I especially like even if you maybe weren't super familiar with the game, I think a lot of people just like more so than expecting it to at least feel as good as it did. I think a lot of people, myself included, may have expected it to feel much better or something like to get to have to make it make sense to go
Well,
back into the game and make it
well, yeah,
feel
because
like there was a reason for this hiatus.
like you look at what it is, and like it is a Warner Brothers Studios game. Like like up until recently, you looked at Warner Brothers like, oh, okay, this is a big studio. They have the ability to make quality products up until recently, which is the disheartening thing. And even going to the end of multiverses, at least they're giving people the opportunity to have the game when it goes offline. However, I think it's kind of weird that you have to log in before May
Huh.
in order to create like a save data for your account.
Oh, so is it like
So
if you ever is it gonna be a situation where like if you ever like uninstall the game, you can't get back. Or, like say you don't you like you maybe not even uninstall the game, but specifically this save data. Like if you somehow lost that save data, that
yeah.
you're done. You can't ever get it
So
back.
so so what they did was, because this game was built to be a live service online game. And so I guess the update that came out for season 5 implemented, so once you logged in again, it created like an offline save data on the system, so that once that game goes offline, you can play it offline. But if you're somebody that hopped back into it when it came back, and then you're like, oh, it doesn't feel the same, I don't want to play anymore. If you do not download the game again and log back in before the end date, you can never play the game again.
Hmm.
Even if you were to re-download it after the fact that you have to go back in to make like an offline account to get the game again, I think is kind of weird. I would hope, especially with a lot of people that kind of like us that like put in money to like get certain characters, which by the way, they turned off microtransactions in the game. So you if you didn't have those credits from like the founders packs or like buying credits during the game was live, you can't buy characters. You have to grind for them. And grinding for them, oh boy, is not fun.
Is it? I'm assuming that the like offline version will just have them all unlocked. Maybe not. No. Well,
You would
cause
have
you
to you
can
would
grind
have
for
to
them, so
play
they're not unaccessible, but they're not just available. That is,
yeah.
hmm, that's interesting. It's like,
Like
man,
it's weird. I'm just sad because it seems like it's a curse that any company that tries to make their own Smash Brothers game is always doomed to fail. Like, sure, you got Brawlhalla, which is still doing pretty well, it has a fan base, but like anybody that's not in the cycle of like Brawlhalla, like doesn't know, doesn't care.
no,
Like
yeah.
you have the Nickelodeon All Star Battle Brawl, whatever it's
I think,
called.
yeah, something along those lines
But
of
like, but
battle.
like
Yeah,
those do well enough, but then you have the curse of Nickelodeon does not like to splurge on making their games like super polished unless if it's like a SpongeBob game. So it's kind of in that weird zone. And now you have multiverses where it's like it is a game that had a lot of potential, but for one reason or another, and I think we could point out why, it just couldn't survive. And it sucks because there's been a lot of really interesting live service games that have come out that I guess we could tie this into the other conversation that happened throughout the week where unless if you're like the top percentile of live action games, you're pretty much doomed to fail regardless of what you do. Because we've had games in the past like Knockout City,
Rumbleverse.
like Rumbleverse that were really interesting, really cool games, but if you're not Fortnite, if you're not, Warzone, if you're not Tarkov or any of these like really, really popular live service games, I hope you make it to your first year.
Yeah, it's rough, and it's like I again like we've already touched on it. I think Multiverses definitely could have been one with the legs on it because it's like obviously it's like maybe not the widest audience in terms of people who want specifically like a platform fighter, but yeah, like I remember that game feeling so good at first, and it's like, oh, this whole weird stuff with the offline version. It's like that kind of sucks. I don't know if I really am gonna go back to it. I want the pre Unreal 5 version as an offline thing to just have forever.
Oh my, that'd be so cool. It's like just flip a switch and it's like reverse back into like how it used to be and just make it like, oh, this is so nice. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But no.
Um. So yeah, I was just
But
gonna be lost to time.
yeah, but speaking of being lost to time, to kind of continue on with this broader conversation of what Warner Brothers is doing, I we were talking about how like for example, Monolith Studios was a very well-known studio. It was a studio that had a lot of goodwill towards players with like the the Mortar series that was really fun and the Wonder Woman game that they were making uh that had a lot of promise and now we'll never get those again. It's just kind of like lost to time. Uh, the interview that they had, kind of funny had with Jason Schreier today was, or not today, but like this past week was really interesting, and I think anybody that hasn't listened to it should go listen to it. It was actually very insightful for kind of getting a insider kind of perspective on the whole situation of like Monolith after Shadow of War was like trying to like make their way, make their own situation, and then being kind of like pivoted into like, no, you got to make this Wonder Woman game. It's like, okay, cool. You know, we'll work on it, and they work on it to the point where Warner Brother Discovery gets into this weird zone where if it's not going to make money immediately, we have to kind of like do something. And so it's one of those examples that we talked about just a little bit ago where it's like this game could have been a moneymaker if it was just allowed to run its course and, do what it needed to do. Now, yeah, I guess it was costing more than Warner Brothers was willing to make it worth, but it's just like it's just been like these past 3 years of like seeing all these studios being like chopped to bits and being
Mm.
shut down. It's like these are game studios that people look to like have interesting experiences, and it's just disheartening to see this all happen in real time and just kind of be like, damn, it's like we could have had something real special if it
Yeah.
wasn't for all of this kind of like background corporate political kind of cost cutting, cost saving kind of strategy that just doesn't make sense in the meantime. And the one thing that caught me by surprise a little bit was when Jason Schreier was talking about how this whole situation isn't just like a recent thing. Like this was something that was building up like even way before the Warner Brothers Discovery merger happened. It started snowballing once that happened, and we're just kind of relating it to that sequence. It's like, and now at least the game studio portion of it has new leadership, and we won't be seeing the changes that are happening within that new leadership for maybe like another couple years. But at this point, I don't know how you feel, Simba, but for me, the the shine of Warner Brothers Studios has just faded so hard over the past few years that I kind of have a hard time caring anymore about them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to see where we even go from here. For one thing, because so they shut down Monolith, they shut down Player First Games, they shut down. I want to say it was WB San Diego, who I'm not familiar
Yeah.
with. I don't know if they were just a support studio or if they had games. Because I just really have no idea who they are. I'm a bit surprised that WB Montreal is still hanging on. Um,
Yeah.
because it doesn't especially from the Jason Schreier interview, it doesn't sound like they've been given a lot of trust to go make a new game. They have been a support studio in all but like and he's like they keep I guess being told that they can keep pitching games and be their own thing, but they haven't they're seemingly not working on anything yet. I think their most recent thing is trying to pitch a Game of Thrones game. Um, and it's like to some extent with just how ruthless all of this like cost cutting can be and whatnot, I'm maybe not the most surprised, but almost just like a little surprised because I wasn't expecting to see this for the Wonder Woman game. It's like, well, Rocksteady's still hanging on too, and I think that's only just because of their their history and how storied the original Arkham trilogy is, and that even with the disappointment that was Suicide Squad, there is still some cachet to that name, even just a bit. And it's like I don't know if we can get back there. It's like it very much like I fear that the remaining studios is going to be more of a story of the slow decline of like they don't want to cut everything yet, but like I mean, unless they're going to put out something else like a I don't know, like a Hogwarts Legacy 2 or something, like the only real sort of like solid thing that they have right now, unless I'm forgetting something, is like Mortal Kombat and like NetherRealm. And I don't really
Right.
know, I don't really follow those games super well. I don't really know like how well they do like year after year compared to that. And Obviously, like that one is more of a kind of specific video game franchise, even though they have been making the Mortal Kombat movies. Um, and it's like so I it's very interesting that like I don't it's hard to see like what I guess the future looks like. Like do they perhaps hope to sell? But I don't know. Like Greg made a good point of like I think Blessing too of just like it's kind of a weird situation where so many of these I mean, just Warner Brothers in general, like they're such a IP focused company that like they would probably be very much wanting to only sell the dev but not part ways with the IP. Like they're not gonna sell DC, and it's like I I definitely have the faith that like and it's I
No.
don't think that Rocksteady can't make a good game that isn't a DC, but they're known for only making DC games. I think they've made one game before Arkham Asylum. I don't know what it was called, and then they're entire they made the three Arkham games, or I guess four because they made the VR one too, and then
Mm.
Suicide Squad. It's like I'm sure if someone wanted to like buy them, I'm sure that like a lot of people were throwing around like have them make a Daredevil game, have them make there's or just
Oh wow.
uh I'm yeah original IP is definitely tough these days, but like I'm sure that they could do some great stuff, and then like same with like NetherRealm is the only ones that I could potentially see them being able to be sold with the Mortal Kombat IP, just because like by that point, if we lose NetherRealm, I feel like WB is out of the games business. I feel like if we get to the point where they're either shutting down or considering like a sale of the rest of their studios, I don't really see how much value the Mortal Kombat IP has outside of video games. Like there is a little bit there, but it's like obviously DC is this huge. It's comics, it's movies. They're not gonna sell that, but I feel like there probably is a world where they could NetherRealm could split off and either be sold or become independent and get to take Mortal Kombat with them. But that's like it. Everyone else kind of seems like we're just either waiting for something to hit and then be able to get a chance to kind of come back and make something great again, or that we're just gonna see more shutdowns later on the line down on the line.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to see another game coming out from WB Montreal. I don't know. I heard Portkey Games mentioned. I don't know what that is. It sounds like a Harry Potter thing, but they're not. Avalanche develops Hogwarts, so I don't know what Portkey does or what other. I'm sure maybe they have.
So just looking up Portkey right now, all
Oh,
all they've done is Harry Potter games.
oh, but it's yeah, like mobile stuff, I guess.
Like mobile game, like Hogwarts Legacy was the first like console PC game. Or no, just console game. It didn't even come out on PC, I don't think.
It says I don't know. Is it? It's like at least the Wikipedia page makes it seem like it's a division of like because they do mention Hogwarts Legacy, and it does say here
Yeah.
that that it did come out for PC, but I wonder if it's more of like are they a developer or because it says Portkey Games released Hogwarts Legacy, but I know for a fact yeah, but it says developed by Avalanche Software, so it almost seems like
Okay,
Portkey
so
Games is like an entity that is just in charge of all the Harry Potter stuff.
yeah. Like it looks like it's just a publishing label.
So yeah, I guess the more
Okay.
direct.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, okay.
But like I'm just looking at this other list of studios, right? And you're talking about Avalanche Studios that helped make a whole bunch of other games throughout the years. Like they've worked on Mortal Kombat, they've worked on a lot of their like sports games. Let's see. So they did Hogwarts Legacy, and the last big project that they worked on was Disney Infinity, that Toys to Life
Okay.
game.
Did they do
So
Skylanders too?
no.
Okay.
Skylanders I believe was an Activision
I guess suppose that makes
property.
sense.
But yeah, so I don't know if like they're just going to become a Hogwarts Legacy studio. I don't know if Warner Bros. Will allow them to do anything, but that's what they've been doing. We talk about NetherRealm Studios, like Mortal Kombat is what they do. Um, I would be very shocked and surprised if Warner Brothers didn't try to sell them or like they would try to like get themselves out from Warner Brothers because I don't think with a IP like Mortal Kombat is something that you would just kind of recklessly throw away like that. Like you
Hmm.
would have to figure out something if Warner Brothers really wants to just get away from making video games. Like NetherRealm has to be sold or released or something like that. Um, because that would be rough. Like there would be a lot of really mad people if Mortal Kombat just kind of gets thrown to the dust.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see like a world in which it just is gone forever. Like I feel like the actual like true worst case scenario is we're shutting down NetherRealm, we're keeping Mortal Kombat because we suck and we don't want to sell it for some reason, and then the, they still go on to make a they start up a new dev and they are forced to make like the spiritual successor of Mortal Kombat, which is just another Mortal Kombat in all but name. And that would suck. Like that would be like, but I even like I feel like they've been doing this for so long, and I feel like a lot of like it's I feel like there's a lot of passionate people who wouldn't just like roll over and be like, well, now the realm's gone, we're done, we're just gonna kind of splinter off and go find jobs elsewhere. Like it's hard for me to see like a world where they don't keep trying to make those games even if they get the Mortal Kombat IP taken away from them. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough because like yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
In terms of like that style of fighter with like the gory elements, they don't. There's not really competition there. So it's like while it would suck to
Hmm.
not have it be the Mortal Kombat name, I think it would see success and people would be like just pissed at WB for like killing it. But I think I could see a world in which people go support whatever the new thing is. Um,
Yeah.
and that so in my mind that's like the worst case scenario. But I would tend to lean more toward them being sold in some capacity. And then I keep forgetting that TT Games is also under WB. I don't think I even knew that before the talk of these closures, since it's an interesting one too, because like they're known for making Lego games, but WB doesn't own Lego, so like I wonder if there's a world in
Right.
which if they start talking about shutting stuff down, if like Lego gets involved and they can be like doing deals or trying to talk
Because
to other people who might want to publish the TT games or I don't know.
wasn't Lego Horizon that wasn't
I
TT
don't believe
Games?
so. At least not solely. I know Gorilla worked on it, but they Gorilla wasn't the sole developer either. But I don't think TT Games was a part of that really at all.
So it was Guerrilla Games and a studio called Studio Gobo.
Okay, interesting.
I don't. I'm guessing. Uh, yeah, I don't know what Studio Gobo is. I've never seen this studio before, but yeah, it's really because TT Games is very synonymous with Lego, the Lego games. So I don't know if TT Games was to go away, if it would hurt Lego in any stretch, but
Yeah, they might just.
like Lego is a big seller. Like people buy the Lego games because it's Lego, not so much the property. I mean, yeah, the property helps a lot, but like there is a big fan base for the Lego style games. Um, Again, we can't predict what Warner Brothers will do, but it's kind of like at this point, there's not that many studios left that I feel can be clipped up or, moved along. Like Rocksteady is already at this weird point where I believe it was a Games Daily where they wanted to there was like some kind of like, article about them wanting to go back to the Arkham series and like make another Arkham game. But at the same time, I'm just looking at, you know, the Wikipedia right now and saying like right now they are a assisted studio for the director's cut of Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like they're not, as far as we know, they're not working on anything on their own at this moment
Yeah, it's a
with the
weird one
shutdown.
because it's like it it especially after that Jason Schreier interview, it very much seems like again, aside from NetherRealm, who've kind of been able to maintain putting like a really solid output, and I think I very much hope that they survive in some capacity. It very much seems like even their remaining studios that they didn't close are in a lot of ways shells of their former selves. You know, there's like leadership and a lot of parts of the team that just are gone. You know, um
Hmm.
and like because I think they were saying like leaders from TT Games like left a while back too. I think they went to go make that like Funko Pop game.
Oh yeah. Oh,
um
which just announced that that's shutting down too.
oh, I
So
didn't
it's
even
not a
know that was
big.
like a live service
Oh
thing.
yeah.
I thought it was just like a Lego kind of one and
Well, I don't
done.
know if it's a live service, but it's like it's not doing well.
Mm.
Let's just put it that way. Uh,
And it's I don't know,
yeah,
it's
I don't know. It's just a lot of uncertainty.
for sure, and it's I think it's kind of difficult to pinpoint any one sort of issue. I think I guess the two main things are just kind of the idea of these large corporations that are focused on uh, this endless growth and just trying to games becoming bigger and bigger and having these larger budgets, even ones that are just single player games, just having these massive budgets and these developers not really being given the chance to fail and try again. They either get shut down or they get relegated to be a support studio. But then it's hard to not see the live service element of all this playing a big part at least because everyone wants that Fortnite money, and I always forget because it weirdly isn't talked about as much these days. Even though it's doing, like GTA Online is the other like big cash cow of like live service, and it's like I think some people forget that it's because like at least back in the day you did have to pay full price for that game. Even though like these days I think you can just buy GTA Online separately,
Yep.
but people are chasing that, and it's like imagine what we may have gotten if Multiverses wasn't live service and it was a true Smash clone where the game was feature complete and just out and it was just the game. There was no beta, it was just a Smash clone that you buy for $60 and it just has all the characters and it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, at least you'd be able to play it
Yeah.
uh, once it was done with. Yeah, I don't know. It's a head scratcher because like Warner Brothers also like had an article that came out where it's like, oh, it's like we are focusing on releasing quality, blockbuster games that will, excite players and it'll do very well. And it's like, well, then stop canceling your games to get us, because all you're doing is making us not excited for your games because we have no idea if they're gonna come out or not. Like, because I'm trying to think of right now, like other than Mortal Kombat 1 having more seasons. I don't even know if they're having more seasons. I can't remember if season 2 is going to be their all they announced so far or not. I haven't been in like the Mortal Kombat 1 zone for a long time. But like what other games do we know that are coming?
I mean,
None.
supposedly like not that like we actually know what it is, but yeah, the only they Jason Schreier made it sound like they are making a new Lego game at TT Games. That
I mean, that's,
but
not a that's not a big surprise, but also it's not going to be
it's not gonna be some crazy
the big
thing. Yeah.
game that, yeah, no. Like even though I was saying before, like Lego games are usually a big deal for Lego game fans, but other than that, it's not gonna, drive maximum sales like a, Hogwarts Legacy did, which was at that point it was an anomaly
For
that it did so
sure.
well. So I don't know. It's just sad. It's just sad that we're kind of at this point where looking at the whole games division of Warner Brothers is filled with so much uncertainty and kind of just a aura of just, ugh, I hope they, survive another week or so. It's a bad feeling
It really
all around.
is.
And it's not unique to them, but I think it's the fact that they're such a big studio that they're getting a lot of the spotlight at the moment.
For sure. And I would definitely say, just like generally speaking, I have a lot more negative views on just like Warner Brothers as a whole, especially like after all those mergers and stuff. Is when things like there was that Batgirl movie however long ago that just got thrown in the trash after it was like pretty much done. Um,
Yeah,
and then I think what is that other one? People the Coyote
it was
versus
the what
Acme or whatever.
which got very positive test screenings, which was, wild. And I don't know.
It's like we'll see what this James Gunn DC stuff is about to be, but it's like they just seem to be scrambling in so many ways of just like trying to get back to that. Like we either we need to make DC into the MCU, we need to recapture the height of Game of Thrones, or we need to just like leverage Harry Potter in every way that we can. And
Hmm.
it's like I don't know what the future
I'll
holds.
put, I'll put it this way. I've been saying this for a little while now. I trust James Gunn. I do not trust Warner Brothers.
Mhm. It'll be yeah, I guess that's to be the true test of like how much leeway does he get to just freedom does he get to try to do things his own way. It very much seems like if Superman sucks, then he's not gonna get another chance. I mean, I know there's like some more. There's probably at least a couple more movies that are just kind of already in the pipeline, already being worked on. But yeah, like it seems like if the kind of big beginnings of this new venture aren't like I don't know meeting whatever expectations they're setting for it, which who knows if like if they could be kind of like expecting too much like a lot of these studios do, whether it's games or movies, just like things have inflated to such a point that like it's hard to reach some of these numbers, even though it's like, oh, it's technically possible. Look what this XYZ Marvel movie did or whatever, and it's like sometimes lesser than the best can still be successful, but if it's not in their eyes, then it's not really gonna
Hmm.
matter. Um,
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Fingers
Fingers
crossed for
crossed for
sure.
Superman.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Looks good, and I have at
Yeah.
least in terms of superhero stuff, I've never been let down by James Gunn so far.
Oh yeah.
have
100%.
haven't seen his kind of like earlier or other works, but I know like clearly that's what he's been doing for so long. He loves superheroes, and so I know he definitely has the passion for it at the very least. And I don't even again like I guess just as a last point with all the WB stuff, it's funny to just we're sitting here wondering if the games division of WB is even going to survive, and I keep thinking about their grand plans to like have the DC stuff be like canonized with the games and have the same like actors portray like the same characters across all the media. I'm like, we just need to focus on
We
making
we
any games
we
at
just
all.
we just need a DC game
For sure. It's
that
like
isn't Suicide Squad quality,
that
please.
Constantine game that was like I think WB Montreal pitched. That sounded cool. Like
Bro.
just obviously we don't know
Bro.
what the but it's like just kind of fighting demons and stuff. That'd be pretty cool. And I don't know. It's weird and it's like yeah, it's definitely just yeah, it seems like a lot of poor management and it's a definitely a tough spot to be. It's like I think WB like it's yeah, it's two parts where yeah, I definitely like I said would say that them as an overall company seem to be kind of run on the poorer side, but then games specifically, we're seeing similar things across the whole industry, and so it'll be interesting to see what where we go from here, because obviously, again, I think there's a lot of issues, and we're not necessarily people who've got the inside details like a Jason Schreier, but it's like obviously the live service games are really mucking up the works when when you look at Sony and just like how many games have they canceled at this point? Like it's like I feel like it's inevitable we're gonna hear of two more games from studios we didn't even know they owned somehow just
Yeah,
like they got randomly canceled. It'll be it'll be interesting to see if like studios like Bungie and uh, I don't even is it Haven Studios that are making fair games? Whatever
I think
studio's
so.
making that. If those ever come out, if we ever do see a potential Arkham, another Arkham game from Rocksteady, it's like yeah, it seems like there's like of all these, I guess yeah, with all the turmoil, it seems I don't know how many times we've seen an example, unless it's like a internal dev at like a big company like a Microsoft or Sony. It seems like as soon as one of these games gets canceled, either the studio gets shut down right away or they're not long for this world. It's like it's tough to come back from
Yeah,
that in this current kind of
like the
climate
like the clock starts ticking,
for
and
sure.
we have we're definitely in an age right now where there's going to be a big shift of some sort. I can't predict like what that shift's going to be, but there is going to be a lot riding on certain game releases this year that or the coming year that's going to dictate what studios uh thrive or meet their demise, which I guess like we could say on repeat, like it's very sad because it didn't used to be that way, but now it's like we're looking at okay, Warner Brothers Studios, Bungie, BioWare. It's like they are in situations, and like other game studios are in situations where it's like they need that one game to not just make them super successful, but just make them survive.
For sure. I actually think to like maybe kind of wind down the podcast. I know we talked before we started about the review, like talking about uh just like how we review things, how we score things. I think I might actually table that for another time to just continue with what we've already been talking about. I think there's been a lot of talk about one of the things that has kind of plagued this era of games and games being so big is we've kind of seen in a lot of ways the death of the double A game compared to like a
Oh
PS3
yeah.
360 era where there was just so many weird games that weren't that long or that high a budget, and they did well for a lot of studios. And I think that might be an interesting thing to talk about for a bit of just like you know how many of these studios are just going to completely shut down and want to get out of games entirely, or like you know could we see a shift back to that of like trying to spin up smaller games that don't take as long to make, that won't make as much money, but they're not as ambitious. There's not as much that can go wrong with them. They can get them out the door and they can be liked, and they don't have to be this never-ending cash cow or this like 300+ million dollar epic game that it can just be just a shorter game. Like I said, it really seems just like really ambitious indie studios are the only ones that might put out something that you would call like a double A game. It doesn't really seem like we're getting
Mhm.
many of those from the actual big publishers. Like, and when they do, they don't meet expectations and they get shut down. Something like a Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that the studio was able to ultimately survive, but obviously Xbox did not
Hmm.
care about any performance that that game did. And while I definitely wouldn't call them double A games, I guess another thing you could say is just shorter games. Like I think Capcom is flourishing with like Resident Evil games are not that big, they're not that long. They just kind of are in and out and they're doing what they need to do and they're just a really high production value for a short like focused experience.
Right. No, I agree that we're kind of in this age where double A games that aren't really a thing anymore. Like it's literally indie or, triple A, quadruple A games. Um, which is I guess in a way like both kind of good and bad just because like indie games has come such a long way where you do have those studios that are very well known at this point that create very interesting games that a lot of people enjoy. Like we look at like every time Revolver Digital comes out with like a new game, everybody looks like, "Oh, I don't know what this game is, but it's a Revolver published game. I'm gonna go check it out." And usually people love it. Or you have games that kind of come out of nowhere, like Balatro or Dave the Diver, or what have you, that is by all intents of an indie game, but it has so much more reach and so much more like breadth
Mm.
that it feels like it is kind of in a way like the new version of a double A game. And then you have like those really smaller indie games that are kind of filling up like what you would traditionally think an indie game is. That's a very small developed game that is very not simple, but like it is what you expect an indie game to look like. And then you have indie games that have that quality. It's like, oh man, this is actually like a really fun time. And it's not like the AAA like budgeted games, but it's somewhere in that like murky kind of like middle ground of like indie and AAA. But like no, I don't think because like you remember like the good old days of like having like those like property games where it's like movie tie-in games or
Yeah.
stuff like that where like some of them are really bad but some of them are really good surprisingly enough. Like I'm looking at you Star Wars Episode 3 for the PS2. That was a fun game. But yeah, we don't really have much of that anymore, I don't think. But I think it's also just because we don't have the same experiences we used to have. Because it used to be like, okay, you go to like a Blockbuster or something, and there's like a row of games that you have to choose from, and you don't at that age like you don't know like what the difference is between like a triple A versus like a double A game or anything like that. You just pick a game that looks fun. Um, but I think nowadays, like the conversation always leads to like triple A and indie games, where for me, it's more so like we need to focus on like just what's fun
Mm,
and like
yeah.
what's interesting. And not to say that people don't do that, but I think like when you like the first thing you look at when you walk in the door is like, okay, what is this? It's an indie game. Oh, it's a triple A game. It's like, okay, well that or automatically sets an expectation in your head of what to expect for that game. Whereas I think maybe it'd be a little bit healthier to just kind of go in being like, okay, what is this game? Like, what is this game? What is it supposed to deliver to me as far as like gameplay goes, or like what's supposed to look like? Because I mean, just like look at all like the games that have been deemed like game of the year worthy, and like graphically, they're like a big, huge like paintbrush of the different style of games that you would look at like let's go back to Balatro for a second. Balatro is a one person developed game that like when you look at it, it's like okay, it looks like an indie game, but it has game of the year contender quality to it, and it has won awards for
Yeah.
being a game that's not a triple A game, and it's beating out triple A games. So at that point, it's like okay, well, what's the uh what's the word I'm looking for? What's the accomplishment of being titled as a AAA game versus an indie game when we are in a day and age when either one of them could outdo the other in any aspect of, gaming as essential. I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but it's just kind of like getting the idea across of just like I think like anchoring in on like what is a AAA game at this point is it's not as much as what it used to be anymore. Like gaming in general is just like a very just like big like ambiguous like zone of like quality, um depending on like what you're looking for in the gaming industry. As far especially like with the age of digital, like you can have so much access to anything nowadays. You know, it's yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's like yeah, 'cause like I don't know, like it's interesting to see like I feel like and this probably goes for many industries, but it's like it so often feels like the people at the very top are so slow to kind of like see what has happening in the industry and like react like when you get games like a Balatro or like these games that are like so small and not very ambitious that do incredibly well that they don't necessarily either they're not paying attention or they don't care because they still are like, well, we canceled these 8 live service games, but we all we need is one Fortnite. We still want just the one,
You
um,
just need one that does very well.
and it's like because like Helldivers 2, that's like I would almost put that like maybe in that double A category, where it's like it's kind of like
Yeah.
a with it's like a indie game, but with the backing of Sony, that was able to be sort of elevated to be maybe a little bit more than it otherwise would have been. And while that is, I'm sure, a great success, and they keep putting out battle passes, and the game, I don't, I still love hopping back into that game every now and then. But it's not trying to do too much, and it knows what it is, and I wonder, what could like how quickly could have like an Insomniac or someone put out a game like Helldivers, someone who's like very experienced and has this big team, but they choose to not do something as ambitious as a full blown blockbuster Spider-Man game. Like how or you look at like because there's not too many examples. Like Hi-Fi Rush is like another one I can think of, and then there's like weird examples of big studios making truly like what you would consider to be like those small indie titles, like Obsidian making Pentiment, just making this little game, and it's like I don't know, it's interesting. There's definitely like a little bit more, I guess, experimentation when it comes to the scope and budget of a game when it comes to Xbox, and it's unfortunate that it's like, it doesn't seem to have either they don't seem to care even when the game gets like critical acclaim like Hi-Fi Rush, or their other attempts maybe don't land, like where something like a Hellblade 2 being like a smaller
And
game. Um,
yeah, and it's it's just a weird balancing act of everything because you never expect like what the player is going to react to like certain games and how well and you're like be I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be like a game developer because it's basically all a guessing game
mhm.
because you can have an idea and you can have your expectations for that idea and commit and execute on that idea and trying to like push some whether it's you know pushing towards the idea of like how a game should be played or pushing on like being the game that has like the most advanced graphical like benchmarks that any game has ever had. But at the end of the day, if the players don't click, then that's a risk, and it's kind of hard to be in the games industry and try to push forward, but then also try to be risk. averted, or I don't even know if I'm saying the right word, but like being,
I think risk averse is like a good way.
yeah. So it's just that weird balancing act that the games industry has just kind of stumbled upon into, where you know you're spending a whole bunch of money on these big budget games. You know, it's weird that you kind of have to try to predict it being a slam dunk without knowing it will be a slam dunk, and then if it does, awesome, great, but then also means you have to kind of put in equal to more effort later on, or it doesn't do great and it's like, okay, well, now we need to like refocus, like cost cut, things like that. Where I think like what we're trying to like get at is that, and this conversation's been done over many times by other people, where it's like you don't have to keep making these big like blowout games all the time. You can do mix and matching of smaller games that won't be played a lot, but it will be enjoyed for the time that is there. Having these like $40, $50 games that come out that is like made to be an experience that you could just have and then be satisfied for when the next big thing comes out. I think that's been lost on a lot of big AAA studios.
For sure.
And I don't know if maybe we'll ever get to that point where they will start doing that or not, or maybe they'll just kind of publish other smaller studios games and just kind of treat that as a win for them, kind of like how Helldivers 2 was. It's not necessarily a PlayStation studio, but it was published and it became a big win for PlayStation when Helldivers came out.
For sure.
I don't know. The games industry is a very, very tricky place at the moment, and we just kind of have to navigate the way that things come at us and try to look at a game for what it is compared to like what the expectations are, because I think that's another thing that we could try to talk about next time to go along with like the review thing, is like how much does not only studio expectation but player expectation factors into like how well a game does, whether or not.
For sure. Yeah, it's like it's especially when so many uh of like the bigger studios are kind of banking on their well-known IP being something that's going to like bring players in, and a storied franchise is going to have these built-in expectations, or even if it's not a necessarily a continuation of like a an IP, like even just like a particular studio might be well known for a certain kind of game or whatever. Look, Suicide Squad. Like as much doubt and as there was, and like questioning of like, why are we making a Suicide Squad game? Who really wants that? I think before we actually got the game, a lot of people were still were like, it's the next Rocksteady game. They've kind of they've not missed so far. Um, and
Hmm.
it's yeah, I think that definitely can play a role uh into kind of like the general sentiment of a game, just kind of what audiences were expecting.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The games business is a cruel mistress.
It is indeed. Uh, One last thing I do want to shout out. I never played it, but just like I think one of your comments, it sparked a memory. It's like what's the game? I think it's called Outriders. Do you remember that game?
Oh my God, yes.
It's like the three player,
Oh,
uh, kind of like I don't even know what like would be the best way to describe that game.
it's like a third person like looter shooter
Yeah.
kind of thing. I remember that game too, and it kind of just came and went. It was like the vein of, like, it was one of those like that was categorized in like, oh, this could be the Destiny killer, and it's like, okay, sure, okay,
Well, that's the thing is
but
like to go back to just like expectations of like from what I from what the like devs actually came out and said was like um because I think in terms of just like I don't know, I guess like gameplay, yeah, it was kind of like like a something like a Borderlands or like Left 4 Dead, just like you were partying up and you're going on these missions, and then everyone was like talking about like what's gonna be like the legs on this game, or like what's gonna be the future of this game, and the devs just came out and said this is the game. Like this is not a live service game. This was just meant to be a campaign experience that you go play and you have fun with, and then it's over. Um, just in
That's
the
what I appreciated from them.
I think to that point, like I think there was DLC only because it
There was
had
like
done
one bit of
better
DLC.
than they thought it was going to. And so like by all accounts,
Hmm.
it sounds like they got what they needed from that game. And so it's like it's funny when uh people are like, oh man, like what some people like who maybe thought it was supposed to be some Destiny killer thing. It's like, oh, what a failure that was. It's like it wasn't trying to even be that.
And that's not what it was. It was like you're saying, it was like a like a detailed experience for what they wanted, and it was just like a co-op looter shooter,
Yeah,
which had a very interesting mechanic. Whereas like the more you leveled up, the more the world leveled up with you, and you could change that how like if things were getting too hard, you could like level the world down, and it could dictate like what your experience bonuses would be, or like what kind of loot you would get based on the difficulty of the world you're in. And I thought that was cool. Like me and my buddy like played it for a little bit, and it was like a fun time. But yeah, it circles back to like the idea of expectation. It's like if you're going into the expectation like with the idea of like, oh, this is gonna be a Destiny killer, it's like of course you're gonna look at it and be like, this is nothing like Destiny. Like what is this game? But if you just went into it being like, oh, this is gonna be like a cool like sci-fi like co-op shooter, you're probably gonna have a fun time because it's your expectations are this is a new experience that you're just gonna kind of walk into and probably have a good time with it. So that's a whole big conversation that I think we can get into
yeah, I
at
think
some
that's
point.
definitely be a good topic. Um, but yeah, I think just to close things out here, we will just shout out some just like other podcasts and whatnot that people have got going on in the community. Yeah, I did see that uh, your podcast with United We Nerd had a 4 year anniversary, and I was impressed by
Yeah,
that. I thought that was cool to see.
yeah. 4 years going, we have just kind of trucked along doing our thing. Had a lot of fun. We just kind of reminisced about the past 4 years, and of course, recently we introduced our fourth member of the podcast. So it was a very interesting year of fours because it was fourth year with our fourth member, and then afterwards we played Marvel Rivals that just implemented all the Fantastic Four. So it was a very four anniversary for us. So it was a lot of fun, and yeah, like we didn't expect to be around this long, but we just been having a lot of fun, and we're just gonna keep going until the wheels fall off at this point.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely um, no small feat to even do a podcast for a year, let alone multiple. I guess I'm not familiar with like the back end, or I'd be curious if you are one of the main people who like produces a podcast, if you share the work on that, like because
Yeah.
something that I just think is funny of this, like it's while doing a podcast is fun, it's always like it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
more fun to be the guest that doesn't have to do anything else.
When all the responsibilities on somebody else. For sure. Um, I guess for us, I I do the production side a lot of like the live streaming. I man that, and then as pertains to like the YouTube uploads and like the podcast feed, I do that. And then my co-host Joel mans all of the like social media, like short form content,
Okay.
like for TikTok, Instagram. He mans all that, and then our other our other member, Marcelo, he travels a lot for his work, so he's kind of like our man on the ground kind of thing. That kind of just, you know, whatever convention he goes to for like work, he kind of like on the side, he kind of just like kind of, tries to spread the word out a little bit more. So he's our mobile advertisement for
Nice.
for the podcast. Um, but yeah, it's just been a real blast trying out different things and kind of like getting used to it because like we've been around for 4 years, but we're still fairly new when it comes to just kind of like the content making and the uh trying to like branch out more with like other content creators as well. That's a big goal for us. Um, but yeah, I mean, for anybody that's like out there like trying to like do their way, it's like, hey, as long as you're doing it, that's a win. Like as long as you just keep going at it and you're having fun, that's like the biggest thing. Like if you're having fun, that's like the biggest win that you could ever have. Like you don't have to be like as super consistent. Like you can be a human. You can have days where you're like, oh, I can't do it today. Like I just need time to like be, by myself or like recharge yourself. That is fine. Like I I like to promote having a healthy relationship with the content you create because if your motivation to have fun starts to dwindle, go away, that's like when burnout really sets in hard. And I've gone through that even like on my own uh plenty of times. So I am a champion of, going at your own pace because taking care of yourself will show through in your content. At least that's my philosophy. So that is my imparting knowledge for doing this for the past 4 years plus.
Great, great. Yeah, I think that was well said, and you definitely great advice. That's definitely something that I've kind of thought about spinning this podcast up. It's just like, of course, always, the goal is to have fun and to make sure you're enjoying what you're doing. But it's especially for someone like me who's I'm just completely new to it. I've not been a
Mhm.
like sort of host or producer on a podcast, let alone a guest on somebody else's podcast, and just getting that into that headspace of like sometimes it's easy to like maybe put pressure on yourself that's too much or like unnecessary of like oh we might have like the two couple of weeks of getting together and having a good podcast or something, and then things might come up, it might miss the next week, and then you start getting in your head of like, oh, like is there going to be people who are like super disappointed that it didn't come, or like how how important is it to keep a level of consistency or whatever. And it's like sometimes you have to like step back and realize that there are it's not bad to have goals to strive for, or like an idea
Right.
of in mind of what you want to achieve, but that to not like necessarily let it take away from just the continued effort to get back out there and do it if you have
Right.
things that fall through the cracks or whatever.
Yeah, and especially for like people that are starting out as well, like kind of have to drive home the fact that you like especially like for you and like for other people that are just starting out like on their own, like you are like the one man show for all intents and purposes. Like you could look at like podcasts like Kind of Funny, or you can look at, any other, big production like content creation that you are fans of and like watch. Like they are a big team. So they are able to kind of do the more consistent things. So just starting out, like you are either by yourself or you have like one or two friends that are helping out with you. Um, it's okay to like it's okay to want to like aspire to having that. kind of production quality and having that kind of like, there's always like something that's been able being able to kind of go out, but you know, you have to give yourself more credit than you think you deserve just because you are doing this.
Hmm.
Like you are the show. Like camera production, like post editing, kind of like that is like a one person job, and a lot of people can't do that, and that's fine. But it's also like it's a learning process. There are going to be days where things do not work. Like trust me, like I've been doing my podcast for 4 years, and there is always something going wrong.
For
Whether it's
sure.
live or in post production, there's always something that does not work, and you just kind of have to be like, all right, I could try to fix it, or I could just be like, okay, this is what it is for this week. And I think we're in a climate nowadays where a lot of people understand that better, uh, especially like the kind of funny community. Like, I think in a way, like when stuff like that happens, like we see on like Games Daily all the time, stuff just doesn't work for one reason or another. But I think it adds to the charm of like the personalities that yeah, there could be a day where the video wall doesn't work, or there could be a day when like OBS just decides to like shit itself and like updates like set everything off wonky and like Discord and stuff like that. But it's like there's like a certain charm to that because it's like, oh, it creates like a funny moment that you can't recreate. It is a very natural, just kind of like instance that could just create a whole funny thing. Like, what was it? My co-host Joel, for example, uh, we were having our anniversary podcast stream, and there's a moment where he like trips, but then his camera like freezes, and so it's like it looks like he's like just tripping into the void, and it was just like one of those things where like it's a technical flub that you just can't work around, but it just creates something that's funny. So I don't know, long-winded, but like content creation can be very fun as long as you allow yourself to stumble and move forward.
For
You
sure.
know, there's a time and place for perfectionism, and sometimes that time and place does not, it's not necessary. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good sentiment to have of just like it's not bad to have goals or to strive to make a great thing, but to at the end of the day, just by simply showing up and doing it at all is a feat in and of itself, and something that
is the biggest victory you could ever do. You just
for
show up.
sure, because it's like, I've that because I think especially anyone who's kind of like in the online space or thought about making something, that is kind of one of the things to jump to first is a podcast because it seems very easy, and I think it's probably still one of the easier things, even if there is a lot of work involved. Um, and it's like I've certainly said like, oh, I'd like to give that a try, and for years and XYZ thing, I'll either give myself an excuse or not be in a place to do it, and it's like it's definitely been helpful over like the last, just like coming into this new year of 2025, like even when it might be I might take an extra day to like actually upload the podcast because it was like it took more work to edit it, or maybe I like miss a week, to like bring myself from maybe being down on myself to just remind myself just like, oh, you're actually doing it. This is something you've talked about for so long, but now you can no longer say that you you only aspire to do it, or you only have the idea of doing it. Like it's been done. We've
Hmm.
achieved uh, uploaded podcasts at this point, and that just feels really good. And it's the thing that's like inspiring to want to keep going. And yeah, I've been having fun, having a great time doing this. I appreciate you uh, being a guest on this with me.
Yeah, man, it's been a fun time. I've enjoyed these conversations we've had the past few episodes, and you know, it's it's one of those things where it's like it's something to look forward to. You know,
For sure.
And just like anything else, like there's gonna be those days where it's like, oh man, like can't do it. That sucks. But let's look forward to the next week.
Hmm.
We'll have so much to talk about next week. It's gonna be
Yeah.
bananas. Uh, so it's always that ebb and flow of content creation that can keep this exciting just as long as you think it's like, okay, you know, let's do this. Like we'll figure out a way to do this. You know, the only time that you really are defeated is if you just don't do it. Like you always thought about doing it, and this is kind of me just like speaking out into the void of people watching this or listening to this right now. It's like the only time you're really defeated is if you never try. It's like you always miss 100% of the chances you don't do,
Yep.
kind of thing. I know I messed up that quote, but I'm just rolling with it. So I'm just gonna keep going. But like honestly, you can never really fail if you try. Because even if something doesn't go right, it's something you can learn, and it's something you didn't know yesterday. And you can take that information and move forward and just keep incrementally just adding on to that experience to like who knows? Anybody out there, who knows what you could be doing a year, 2 years, 4 years from now? It's like how, and you'll have that timeline of progression. You could be like, oh wow, I've actually did learn something and I actually did progress. It doesn't have to be big progress, but every little increment of progress that you make, just trying something new, trying something different, pivoting, doing something completely different is progress. And that's like the very interesting thing about this whole like content creation goes, you know. So I'm very excited to see what other people could do, but also I'm very excited to see where the guest bedroom will be a year from now, you
For
know,
sure. Yeah, I'm
and seeing
very excited to see that as well. Um, yeah, it's like I think yeah, as long as you kind of keep the faith and kind of like remember to have fun and remember to like give yourself credit for that progress, then yeah, I think you know the possibilities are endless.
100%.
But yeah,
You know,
or yeah, did you have something else?
well, I was just gonna, because I know we kind of went on like a little a little side tangent again there, but I think we did want to shout out a few other podcasts from the community that have been going on. I know you mentioned last time the SmackDown podcast.
Oh yeah, there was like I had listened to Story Motors podcast where they talked about that was like I think we talked about like wrestling of like they had an episode where they were it was really funny because it's like a video game focused podcast but they were gonna talk about like the WWE 2K game, but then it was just like wrestling in general. Just like I think they talked about the game for like maybe 10 15 minutes and then it was just like a big smattering of like oh different shows that they went to and different things and that kind of like even kind of inspired me to uh think about and like want to look more into to wrestling since I'm such an outsider when it comes to that. But yeah, Story Motors is they just hit their 1 year anniversary, and
Congrats.
yeah, I think it's a quite the feat and something that I'm very impressed with because I've watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes now. It's like I don't know if this is just a recent thing. I don't know how far back this goes, but they seem to have a new guest on like, each podcast, if not a couple guests, and
Oh, that's awesome.
a lot of them are kind of funny best friends, and then some of them aren't even. Like I feel like I'm gonna get this wrong because like I'm still struggling to learn people's names, especially when it's like in this online space. A lot of people have like two names. Sometimes they'll have like their actual name, but then there's also their username. And so it's like, I want to say Story Motors is hosted by Matt and Robert. I know Mr. Hawks is like Robert's like username, and then they've got uh yeah, I think Robert's like the only like it's only half of them. It's only one of them. He's the it's like a true like big fan of Kind of Funny, and then he's like through the podcast has like been able to like share that with his co-host, um and then it's interesting to hear like sometimes the people that they have aren't necessarily in that community. Uh uh, One of the recent podcasts was with I believe her name is Rose Waltz, who's just someone in the fighting game community who I've never heard of before, who's not necessarily
Oh,
like a
nice.
Kind of Funny best friend. But I think even saying that, I think the way that that podcast came to be and the way they were able to link up was because of the Kind of Funny community. Because I think it was just one of those things where I think like Andy rated them, and so that's why Mr. Hawks wanted to start watching them, and then it all looped back around to like them having them on the podcast. And so yeah, it's I think it's great that they made it to a year, and it's really cool. I'd love to to talk to them just in terms of like I'm impressed by like the amount of different guests that they have on, because I'm definitely in that place where like obviously it helps when the podcast itself can get a little bit more traction, but I'm definitely in that place of like I don't like I feel awkward about like um wanting to just like go out and like ask certain people to be on the podcast. It's like I want
Oh,
them
trust,
to
yeah.
come to me, but it's like I know that like it's like a weird like because on the other hand too, like as just like a the audience member, there might be other podcasts that I want to listen to or want to would like love to be a guest on, but I also don't want to ask to be on the podcast. Like on both sides of it, I'm like,
No,
oh, like
yeah.
am I good enough? Or like I don't want to like pressure them or make it awkward when they don't want to do it. uh,
Yeah, it's one of those big hurdles that even I still have a problem with of like trying to like advertise like our own show and be like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing over here. Do you want to be on it or do you want to do something sometime?" It's one of those weird like muscles that you have to stretch 100% to like even feel slightly comfortable with it because it's just awkward. It's just so
yeah.
awkward to be like in like advertiser mode. All like even though it's like you're at like events or you're like communicating with people that like do the same thing, it still has that awkward feeling inside because like, oh, I don't want to like come off as like, somebody that just wants like people to be on like the show. It's like, no, I want to have conversations with people, but it's like that weird like, "Ugh, I'm being very like businessy right
Hmm.
now."
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be a learning experience for sure. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I'll we've also got another podcast that they've been posting a little bit in the Discord for the guest bedroom. It's called the Download Queue, and I believe I don't know
Oh.
how. I know it was in the recent weeks. They also where it spoke about achieving that 1 year anniversary, and I was like,
Hey.
it's just that's really fun to see like just like not only how many people in the community have just any sort of podcast or like content of their own, but that have been had it going for a while, and it's like I think that especially just going back to what we're talking about in terms of like if you ever feel discouraged, it's like if you find yourself in a community of people that you like to to communicate with or like be around, it can be inspiring to see those people uh, doing and succeeding in their own thing and keeping up with the kind of things that you're trying to do. And it's cool to see that so many people are kind of have that passion or seeing it through with their own podcasts and whatnot.
Mhm. 100%. And I hope that la- later on throughout the course of this podcast, we keep getting introduced to more and more podcasts from the community as well, just to be able to check out. Because there's a lot of it's the awesome thing about podcasting. There's so many options out there, but it's also the tail end is like there's so many options out there. You can't keep track of all of them.
Yeah,
So um
it can be a definitely
I
like a sea, like it's like I think I think through word of mouth is like my favorite way to like learn about new podcasts because I've spent a couple times where I just like maybe I you know feeling something different or like I ran out of kind of funny stuff and I've just gone on to like a podcast app and I'm like I don't know where to go. There's just so many. It's just like
Like,
such
what
a
do I
sea,
search for?
and it's
Yeah.
like and it's funny if it's like I'm like oh I get maybe more video game stuff. It's like oh well, apparently I already listened to two of the most popular video game podcasts. It's like Gamescast and Games Daily. Um, but yeah, no, like there's just so many people doing great stuff out there, and it's whether it's just talking to your friends and what they listen to, or just like the amount of different podcasts that have guests on that expose
Mhm.
you to new stuff. Like the only other one that I've been listening to is just that. It was Jerica that went on Kind of Funny Games Daily when they were spinning up the Drop In Drop Out podcast. I was like, I probably wouldn't
Mm.
have known that existed or necessarily hopped in on that, and I've been listening to that. I still think it's so interesting that they spun that up with like a 7 person like team
That's a
like
lot.
meant to all be hosts, and I was like, oh, how's that gonna work? How is there gonna be like a a good sort of like are you going to be watching an episode that actually has all 7 hosts and feel like everyone is able to kind of get a word in or like talk about things in a the way that flows? And the thing that became very clear is like who knows how long that they've been trying to get that off the ground, but they clearly know each other and are like friends and they have a banter already and like
Hmm.
it worked really well and I've been very impressed because they've kind of gone all out on like for when you talk about just like a podcast who's just starting, they have a crazy amount of production value. They've got like, graphics and transitions and actually like the I guess talking points of the podcast are very well laid out so
Right.
it's like the different hosts can kind of contribute or like it's baked in like what everyone's kind of going to talk about uh from from the get-go and I think more the point, like it's definitely fun to see all 7, and I'm amazed at how well that works. But I think the true sort of strength is the idea that like it's not necessarily going to be all 7 people every podcast, but that they have so many hosts that they can sort of even when someone needs to take a week off, they still have you know uh, some sort of combination there. And the really interesting thing that I have that they've been doing is each week a different one of them hosts the podcast, and
Mm.
it's actually like not just a kind of it's not something like a games daily or something where it's just like we're just gonna still talk about the news, but it just happens to be someone else reading the like rigmarole. It's like each host has brought a completely different energy to this is what the topic's going to be and like it'll be something that they're passionate about even if like say it's like JRPGs for example even if like 2 or 3 of the other hosts that don't even play JRPGs it's like well that's what this host is into and they structured like an entire podcast around it and they go really hard with their topics like this last most recent one was they had an entire show talking about how to fix Pokemon from the idea
Oh,
of
okay.
the actual host that week it was Jerica and she's a fan of Pokemon but hasn't gotten into like the last several generations of the mainline games. It just kind of felt like
Hmm.
the way she put it was like she hasn't felt like Pokemon grew up with the people who played it back in the day and so
Hmm.
that they went host by host like did a whole thing of like how would we make a Pokemon game versus like what
Interesting.
features would it have and what would you like the Pokemon to be what kind of region or setting would it be placed in and they designed their kind of like dream Pokemon game and it was very interesting and quite funny because they I guess there's some sort of program online or something where they she was able to make like fake like Pokemon like characters like
Oh,
based on the hosts and stuff and like
hmm,
incorporate that into like the presentation of the whole thing and something like and then
that's cool.
so that was really fun and I'm it's been great to see that uh just like getting a lot of love out there. Obviously like it's um yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's great that they got that opportunity to be on kind of funny and kind of like promote that and that that they've seen some support after that initial sort of like announcement of it. Um, but yeah, I think beyond that, it's cool to see all this cool stuff people are making and you know the hope would be that any one of the host from any one of those podcasts that we've talked about would be a guest on the guest bedroom someday, and I'll work up the courage to actually ask somebody to do it.
and and vice versa.
Yeah, that too. It's like I would love to hop on, and yeah, I would. I can't. I'm sure that'll be a nice experience to to be on a guest to be a guest on a podcast and just not have to do anything else. But until then, it's like while it might be a decent amount of work involved, I still am at the point where it's like even after editing and doing all the things, once it's finally uploaded, I do get like a sense of accomplishment and it feels good, and I'm definitely enjoying it. And I think it's yeah for anyone out there who wants to create anything, even if it's not a podcast necessarily, it's like we were saying, like doing it and actually having it out in the world kind of like fuels that. I think that the more you do it, the more you believe you can do it. It kind of silences that like imposter syndrome a little bit of like, well, I am doing it and I have done it and people are seeing it and watching it and it's like, it can be hard to take those first steps, but it's like really important that you like kind of break the seal
Hmm.
and get yourself to get out there.
100%.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
man.
that'll about do it for this week. It was a good talk, and yeah, excited
Yeah.
for the next episode. But yeah, I guess for me, that's all I'm kind of really doing is the podcast. You can find like my personal social media just like at everywhere at Jonesing Simba. I do like hope to do more things, like do other YouTube videos and whatnot. But for right now, it's this podcast, and that's been a great time. And um, so yeah, I guess just like stay tuned until further notice, or just like want to see any random memes on my Blue Sky is about it. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to kind of sign off with or shout out.
um, you know, just kind of same, just Brian Saber anywhere on social media, or want to catch me live on the United We Nerd Twitch channel, live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, where we talk about a whole bunch of other things, or we goof around and play games. So that's where I will be, and of
Alrighty.
course here on the guest room.
Yep. Hope for the yeah. I'll definitely try to reach out to people more, but again, as always, anyone who has an interest in guesting, be sure to reach out. Just whatever way is easiest for you, whether get into those DMs or I don't know what we're calling tweets on Blue Sky if they have a name, but
Workshopping. We're
just
workshopping still.
yeah, just definitely don't be shy and yeah, well, we'll be here for anyone who's interested, and we'll keep going. And yeah, this has been a great time. Uh, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.